I moderated it with Peter Williams.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, Bob, yes. Yeah, he's doing really good.
Okay, I guess we're live. Welcome to the November 2024 meeting of the Albany County Planning and Zoning Commission. We'll start with our usual roll call. Ms. Hanning?
Here.
Mr. Platt? Here. Ms. Kokornik?
Here.
It's been David is not here at the moment. We hope she'll be along and Hinkley here. So we got 4 out of 5. That's a quorum. First is the agenda. Now we had a suggestion for an addition to the agenda, Mr. Gertz. Is that still in the works?
What's that?
We had a request for a presentation.
It's on the agenda.
Oh, it wasn't another one I was looking at. So you got it on.
Yeah, we just added to the.
Okay. And you put it on. We talked about putting it in the end.
Yes.
Okay. And where is it?
Mr. Chair, would this be one of the type of
Is there a?
items that could be moved up to the citizen comments,
Okay.
non-agenda related topic?
Well, that's what I wonder. I had a brief discussion with Mr. Gertz about whether it was more appropriate at the end. It's kind of was out of our normal order. How long a piece are we talking about? I mean, that would be the other home for it. What do we have a sense of how long do you want to take?
10 minutes.
But it depends on the discussion. The discussions.
Okay. They have a 10-minute first presentation with whatever discussion you want.
Okay, and this is regarding the sign ordinance. We understood, is that right? Well, what's your pleasure? My sense was there's lots of other things we're discussing, and if that gets placed in line, that would not be to the convenience of our attendee.
You hit the video button again. It's blurry. There's no point having.
I like things convenient for them.
Okay, and was that where you were headed? Let the record reflect the arrival of David, so we're at full strength. Okay, well, but if someone would like to make a motion regarding the agenda, including the addition and where it might better fit, now's the time.
Is that the Lamar advertising?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, I move that we move that up to the citizens comment section of the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay. Is there discussion of that motion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that carries. Other amendments to the agenda? Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second. Moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We have an agenda. Okay, first business item would be approval of the minutes. I'd just like to say, in reference to our discussion last time, very nice job.
Yes.
Maybe Mr. Holmes will tell us that he's been doing nothing else since our last meeting. But I liked the results, so I would certainly like to pass that along. Okay, other comments, suggestions? Sometimes there are little odds and ends of typos, just to clean these up for the record. Anybody got anything?
Yeah, once my thing loads.
Well, I have one thing.
Go right ahead.
For lines 89 through 91, I don't quite understand that paragraph. I'm thinking a word's missing, or maybe it won't work out. Maybe Joe, I'm not quite sure.
I mean, do you want me to explain what's happening?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay,
it's-
so
it's-
this was, we were talking about the conditional use amendment that David brought forward with the wildlife and environmental. And Mr. Hinckley mentioned that the applicant should not only address the potential impacts, but show that there will not be a significant impact.
Okay, that makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just not quite what it says. Can we fix the wording? So it says the applicant should not only be addressed, but show that there will not be significant impact. Should not only address the impacts, but show. that-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have a wording change, or we'll just leave that?
I can figure it out.
Okay,
Yeah.
figure it out. Yeah, I guess understood it, but I was the author of it, so I was in line. I had just one thought, for completeness. I noticed you'd done, like on citizen comments, that there weren't any. Perhaps just add to public applications an affirmative statement that there weren't any, so that a reader isn't left wondering if something was left out. Say, as you have on the others, there weren't any.
Oh.
Does that seem reasonable?
Yep.
Others?
Yes, on line 59, it says Commissioner Albany David suggested put, it should be to put.
Yep.
So my name caught my eye. And then, hang on, let me get to it. What it says, what is it? It's line 128. Can we write procedure for this process was discussed instead of discussion was had about, just make it shorter and easier to understand?
Sure.
And good job. I was very happy.
Yes, thank you.
Right, are there comments or corrections on the minutes? Hearing none, motion to approve.
I move to approve the minutes as amended.
I second.
Seconded to approve the minutes as amended. Discussion. None. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Conflict of interest, Ms. Hanning,
You have none to report?
Mr. Platt.
None.
Mr. Cordick.
None.
Spin David.
No.
Pinkley, chair. None. Good. We're proceeding with a clean slate. We have one public application. Just to remind folks of our procedure, what we'll do is get a report from the staff and subject him to our questions and answers. The applicant will then be invited to address, present their proposal and stand for questioning if there are any. They don't have to do that, but we'll give them that opportunity. Then we'll open a more formal public hearing to anyone who wants to comment either here or online. If you do want to comment, you'll need to come to the podium, state your name and address, so in a clear manner, so it's on the record. Confine your comments to 3 minutes, more or less, and try to stay on topic. There's a general comment period towards the middle of the meeting. And then we will close the public hearing and proceed to have a discussion and a vote on what to do with it. Okay, we have one public application, the Conway Zoning District Amendment ZDA 0524. Looks like Mr. Williams will deliver the staff report.
Yes, so the applicant is Larry Conway, owner is Fletcher Park Baptist Youth Foundation, and this is located at 382 Fletcher Park Road. And their request is to change the zoning to agricultural from rural residential. There were reviews, no one had any concerns. The Game and Fish offered some best management practices for the property. Staff analysis, the planning department believes that the proposed zoning district amendment generally follows the suggestions of the Albany County Comprehensive Plan. This property is currently zoned rural residential, and a change to ag is compatible with existing land use of the surrounding properties. The findings necessary for approval and applicant responses referenced in this report are adopted as findings reflecting that the applicant has adequately addressed the specified impacts, and the same are incorporated herein. Conclusions of law, the applicant is proceeding in accordance with and is in compliance with the requirements of the Albany County zoning resolution, and staff recommendation is to approve the Conway zoning district amendment ZDA 0524, adopting and incorporating the staff analysis, findings of fact, and conclusions of law as each are stated in the staff report.
Good, thank you. Questions for staff? As you're collecting your thoughts, again, I'd like to pass on my thoughts. A good report, very complete. Thank you. And I, as the kind of the findings guy, I like just the addition of those small statements. We're required to have all the paperwork in order, and then you've affirmatively told us, yes, it is. So again, I think it just makes a complete and readable document when we have the applicant's statement, and then that is followed by you guys' careful analysis of that by way of your recommendation to us, and then ours onto the board. I had some questions, but others, what have we got?
Sure.
Good.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Wilmus, Do you know any of the history of how this came to be rural or residential to begin with?
I'm guessing the 97 tax stuff, just like everything else. I'm guessing that's why.
And I know, so were you able to share the game and fish comments with the applicant? Are they aware of?
I believe so.
Okay,
If
I mean,
not,
it's in the packet
will.
for all to see,
Right.
but I didn't know if you specifically.
normally I do, but I can't remember if I did.
Okay, gotcha. You were
Yeah.
too busy working on the minutes.
There you go.
And I know, the land use is like down the road from the zoning, but so the land use falls under allowed use for agricultural or
Yeah,
no conditional use is needed. It would just be
correct.
allowed.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have to bug you with.
All right.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate the comments from the Game and Fish. I think they were very thorough and important in this case because this is part of an important winter habitat for deer, and deer are declining in Albany County and much of Wyoming. So anything that can, you know, enhance habitat for wildlife would be good. No fencing.
Okay, I had a comment, one was the same as Commissioner Hannigan, just do we have a routine process for communicating those management options we get from conservation districts or game and fish? Are those routinely passed on to the?
Yeah, I normally send, so I guess behind the scenes, about 3 weeks to a month before the application goes forward, depending on obviously timelines and stuff. I send a whole bunch of dates and timelines that the applicant has to meet in one email, and then I follow it up with every comment that I've received. But I don't remember if I did that this time.
But that's,
I know I set the dates and stuff like that, but.
that would be the right thing to do. Then just a clarification, and we'll come back to this under staff reports, but technically they are currently zoned ranchette? Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Not the.
Yeah, this application was turned in when it was rural residential. It's actually ranchette.
Yeah,
That's,
I'm not offering that as a mistake, just for my own understanding of.
Right.
Okay. Then I was interested in the applicant's discussion of what's going on there now and the things that would be allowed in agriculture that wouldn't be allowed in ranchette. Specifically, they talk about auditorium, meeting room, RV sites for seasonal workers, activity areas that would archery and shooting ranges. So what we tend to think of this as sort of a monotonic increase in permissiveness from agriculture to R1, R2, and so forth. To tell us about what is allowed in ag that isn't allowed.
yeah. So I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but this is called Camp Grace. This is that property. And I guess I'll let the applicant speak for what they want to do, but it's a camp, so they need more housing. And what they want to do, they could do on rural residential, but they'd have to come back and ask for a conditional use every time they wanted to add some housing for the camp. Whereas right now, if it switches to ag, they don't have to do that. It's an allowed use. They just have to meet the density standards.
Okay, and maybe that's where I read that about RV sites. I mean, certainly one could not develop an RV park under an ag zoning. Am I understanding that right, or
Conditional use.
is that where that would fit? It's the same question we always have of the proposal before us seems quite benign but what is allowed under ag? I was surprised to hear like RV sites for seasonal workers. Is that bounded? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so that would be what we're classifying this as employee housing. So ag employee housing. And I know it's not like a farm operation. But that's what we're classifying it as, which is allowed on ag and prohibited on everything else.
And employee housing unbounded.
Correct.
It could be a 100-unit barracks, or it could just be a
Well, it has to meet the density standards. So
the density
the,
standard is 1 per 35 acres.
correct.
Yeah.
And this is a 630 acre parcel.
So the average density.
So as long as there's one dwelling per 35 acres, they're allowed to do this.
One dwelling on average per 35 acres. Is that what you're
Correct,
saying?
yeah.
Okay. I didn't remember that the ag had that minimum lot size as well as average lot size.
Uh,
But that's what you're telling me, like we do with.
It had, so the average, like if you're looking at a subdivision, the average would be 35 and the minimum is 35.
Right.
But the density standard is 1 per 35 also, which is what we're looking at here.
So if it was a 350 acre plot, you could put 10 residences all side by side.
Correct.
Interesting. Okay.
630, you said?
631, I think is what, yeah. So that's about 18, 17.
And that's not a seasonal thing. That one could actually do that as permanent residences.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. No, thank you for the, just so we understand what we got here. I think that's all I had, again, for my own information. Then I had a question very similar to Commissioner Hennings, and I think we'll come back to that here in a later budget item. That map of the zoning is quite interesting in this kind of sprinkling of rural residential tracts. I assume your answer is the same there. Shrug, that's what it looked like at 97. Do you know anything about any of those?
Yeah, I mean, I know the red there, we did a zoning change, for the one next to it. That used to be commercial and it got changed to ag. The rural residential's though, I don't know.
Okay, and that red commercial, that's just up northeast of them?
Yeah,
That is not new, that's been there for a while as well.
yes, yeah.
Okay. All right, well, that's all I had. Any other questions for Mr. Wells?
I just had one that, right after the warranty deed, there's a page of addresses, and are those the adjacent homeowners? Is that what that is?
Yep,
Okay. So they had to be notified of this?
yep.
And some of them don't have a mailing address?
That would be the United States of America.
Oh, that's the Forest Service.
Of course. 1,600 pounds.
All right, well, that's just entertaining.
Yeah,
Okay, I just wondered what that was.
yep.
And my other questions have already been answered.
I guess I had one more, but just don't go away so quick. It's tax exempt, why is that?
Church.
We are a nonprofit, tax exempt corporation,
Because of your religious affiliation? Is that what?
501c3.
There you go.
Okay. I was guessing that, but I just want to clarify.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Sorry,
gosh.
sorry.
We're gonna get your exercise.
So I finally made my way to the land use table.
Uh-huh.
And they have, it says churches, religious facilities are conditional use on agricultural.
This is housing though.
Okay,
Yeah,
so you just call it, you divorce the housing from the main purpose of the land use?
yeah, I guess.
And I thought the RV situation, the land use table says a campground RV park would be conditional use. Do you agree? Or would you be treating that differently?
So it's tough because an RV park is under the same rules as a mobile home park. And with these being temporary, we don't require permits for RVs that are there for less than 6 months. So we're not really counting those because they are temporary.
But the infrastructure will be there. Right? Picnic tables,
Right, but you can put a picnic table on without a permit. I mean,
no, I mean, a picnic table is an example.
sure.
Beds, is there
Septic
going to
system.
be septic?
That's a question for the applicant, and that's a different thing altogether.
And then the tax status is not in our purview. right?
That's the assessor.
That's the assessor. Other questions?
I guess I mean, just knowing what I know about RV parks and if they don't have, a septic dump, like a purposeful dump station for their waste, it's a really high strength waste that you wouldn't want to see going into the septic tank leach fields. So I don't know, treating it like it needed a conditional use permit, to me, would be a beneficial thing to make sure that game and fish issues are addressed, because now we can do that. And that we're ensuring that like RV waste is handled appropriately. I don't know, it's in the middle of nowhere, but they could impact their own wells. I'm sure all this is down graded. I didn't hone in enough on the map, the layout, but anyway, that's just my 2 cents, and is to see some benefits to treating it like a conditional use situation.
Which still wouldn't get at the question before us, which is a zoning change. So,
Right, yeah, no, I'm thinking out of the starting gate here where I shouldn't be talking.
well, no, but then, and for the applicant, because we have them here, will they then be asked to come forward with a conditional use application for their agricultural zone land? The suggestion is no, or is that yet to be decided, or is that issue land?
I guess it was no before this meeting.
Yeah, although what we're presented here is, the applicant's been quite forthright about that, is like some of these where I'm just trying to bring the zoning into alignment with what's been going on for 50 years. That doesn't address the concern. So where do we leave Ms. Hanning's question as what goes on from here? We aren't committing one way or another by making this zoning change, correct?
Right.
Okay,
You might just ask the applicant.
okay. If we're through with Mr. Wilms, if the applicant would like to give us your 2 bits worth, tell us what you got and
Okay.
address some of the questions you've heard raised.
Okay, well, as far as on septic systems, since you were concerned on that, it is, after the fire, Arapahoe fire in 2012, everything was burned up there. Got all new construction. The septic system was actually pre-fire that was put in, approved by EPA and DEQ. And it is tight, everything from the, hookups for trailers is all connected in to our EPA approved water system and septic system. And so it's not like it's a separate system or anything.
It already exists.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it already exists and has been in since we went and put those in right after the fire in 2013.
Thank you.
So
And so you are a public water supply under EPA
Yes.
jurisdiction?
yes, we are.
So share with us the dimensions of this, the RV aspect of it. How many folks are we talking about? How many units?
Maximum of 6 units. And they are rarely full. And usually the people come up to spend a week working at the camp on building projects that take their RV home. And it's not like they're being charged to be there. It's not a commercial thing in any way, shape, or form. It's literally just to help people that are working up there to have a place to stay.
Can I ask a question? What are you, it says youth, are you hosting, youth and,
We are a Christian campground for youth primarily. We do have in the fall and spring a few retreats for adults,
Mhm.
like over weekends.
and people stay in your facilities or
Yes,
camp
they do.
out?
They stay in our cabins that we have.
Cabins, okay.
Yep.
And the cabins in the RV would all fit within this agricultural residential density
Yes.
is the notion. Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Were you able to look at the game and fish letter?
I have not seen it yet. I'm sure Larry Conway, who filled out the application, he's probably seen it. But he's not around right now, so. I'm Marlon Driscoll, the director of Camp Grace. So,
Well, hopefully you could bring it to his attention to consider.
well, I would love to see it, I kind of expect we're probably going along with most of the things, because we want to keep it as open, as close to, basically the same as what the National Forest is, except for the fact that we can build our buildings on there as we need them.
Thanks, Mr. Driscoll.
You're welcome.
Mr. Platt?
It's not everything.
So, okay, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for considering.
And are there comments from anyone else in the audience that would like to address this application? And I'm looking at a logo on screen. Am I correct, Mr. Williams? We have nobody online?
Yep.
Okay. Take a motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
I second.
Motion to moved and seconded to close the public hearing. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we're done with public hearing. Okay, what's our pleasure? I'm intrigued by the expansiveness of ag zoning. Not that there's anything wrong here, but that's something I'd like us to ponder perhaps going forward.
One comment I have about the RV park. I'm not sure if it's formally defined in our zoning resolution, but the use we've just heard about and discussed here, to me, doesn't qualify for an RV park at all. That's allowed in a commercial zone. They're not talking about a commercial RV park. It sounds to me like just some RVs parked out there. So to me, that's not an issue anyway.
I agree with you.
Yeah, and if in the future somebody wanted to build a real, like, say after 70 years, they sell it, it would become a conditional use if it was gonna be a real park, so it would be considered by whoever's commission is then.
And is it, and this is a kind of question for staff, I guess, is it the commercial aspect of it? I mean, were the accommodation of seasonal RVs to become a commercial enterprise, would that then fall out of ag zoning?
Or into conditional use
Or
under.
into conditional use within ag
So then
zoning?
it could be considered as.
It's
It'd be a
the
conditional use.
I'm sorry?
It'd be a conditional use.
Okay. So under the current zoning, if we accept this application, that would not be something that could proceed without additional applications. That being an expanded kind of RV facility.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
thank you. Okay. That was my concern. Other concerns, thoughts? Would someone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend the Board of County Commissioners approve the Conway zoning district amendment ZDA-05-24. Adopt and incorporate the staff analysis findings of fact and the law as each stated in the staff report.
Second.
Second, is there further discussion of that motion? Ms. Henning, how about you?
Aye.
Mr. Platt?
Aye.
Ms. Kornick?
Aye.
It's been David.
Aye.
Hinckley, aye. It's unanimous. Thank you very much and good luck with your project and appreciate your coming forward and let's get everything matched up correctly.
Thank you very much.
And you don't need to sit through the rest of our scintillating meeting if you have other things you'd rather do.
Got other things to do.
Thank you for your attendance.
Should I be at the county commissioners meeting?
they will have to, we are making a recommendation to them, so the final
Let's say
decision
yes, I'll be there.
will be theirs, correct?
Okay, sounds great. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Right.
Okay, I think we're to citizen comments, Ms. Getz.
Thank you, Chairman Hinckley. Members of the commission, for those of you who I haven't met or haven't met out of Zoom land, it's nice that you all are here now in person. My name is Megan Getz. I have lived in Laramie for 25 years. I work here and I'm here today with Lamar Advertising. You probably all know Lamar because if you look at any billboard within Albany County or the city of Laramie, it usually has a little green tag at the bottom that says Lamar. And Lamar has really been thoughtful over the last year or so about how to meet what Lamar has heard, not only Albany County, but also Wyoming's needs of being more message friendly with our constituents. How do we communicate better with the people in our communities, and how do we really come to an appropriate time lapse, time jump, however you want to look at it, and really reconciling those boards and that infrastructure with current technology. And so it's interesting for you all as you sit here today, because the county has requested to do that. As you probably know, the county has requested to convert a board in front of the courthouse to be electronic. If you drive down Grand Avenue, you see so many signs, whether it's in front of the bank, whether it's in front of the movie theater, you see that it's not mind shock, right? That we're moving to digital conversions. And frankly, the digital conversion is so much more environmentally friendly. It's safer, and it allows you as the county and the city to communicate with the citizens on real time for real emergencies or real messaging that may be really important with the people in our community. So we're not here today to ask you to do anything. Mr. Gertz and Mr. Wilms have been really terrific to work with. We've presented some thoughts, because what Lamar does not want to do is come to the county and say, this is what you should be doing. We want to have thoughtful conversation with your staff to say, what does the code currently allow? What are changes that you think we even need? Albany County's code is different, of course, than the city's code and what is prohibited or what is even in the verbiage now. So we want to answer your questions, give you some thoughts about what this technology would look like, and then take that both from you all and the county commissioners back to your staff and then create ideas and proposals. There is one particular board, and you're going to hear more about that in our proposal, that we think is one of the more obvious locations in which a conversion to digital technology makes sense. And that's the board that's on South 3rd Street. So we'll get into that in more detail. So we're kind of proposing with your staff to think about this through, does an amendment need to happen at all? If it does, what would that look like? And then do we want to even consider just, is a variance necessary for that one board? So that's just kind of high level overview. Our operations manager from Lamar, who really can describe and answer the technology questions, his son's 5th birthday was tonight. None of us felt at all like we needed to tell him he had to be here instead of at his son's birthday party. So with me is Craig Bendixson. He's the regional manager, or he's the general manager, excuse me. Jamie Rideout is the real estate manager, and then Amber Ferguson. So Amber used to work at the county. She came over and we worked together for a number of years. I obviously was not a good mentor because she decided to go to law school. She went to law school and now is back, and now we get to practice together. So that's us. We're here today, and we do have a presentation. We'll try and go through it quickly since you have a packed agenda in front of you, but please interrupt me at any point. Craig and Jamie are going to come up and speak on some of these components. So perfect. You're awesome. Thanks, Joe. So we'll go ahead and start. And first, I'll let Craig introduce you to who Lamar is. These guys are Wyomingites just like us. So I'll let him talk about that.
Thanks, Megan. Craig Bendixson with Lamar. Thanks for the time. I appreciate it. So Lamar is a public company based out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Started in 1902. It's a big company, but locally we're based out of Cheyenne, and that's what we are. We're local. Lamar really allows us to be autonomous in the markets that we're at, so we can really get down to the local levels. And so really good company to work with, and let me get to this here. So we have in the state of Wyoming about 1,300 billboard faces, not structures. In Albany County in particular, we have 100. And so what we're talking about today with the county anyway is really one structure that we're wanting to update. We're not wanting to add anything. We're just kind of wanting to update the technology. And so Jamie Rideout, a real estate manager, will talk more on that.
Good evening, I'm Jamie Rideout with Lamar Advertising.
We haven't advanced yet at all, so Jamie, if you wanna, so go ahead and advance to the next slide.
Yeah. Technical, okay. I'm going to advance.
So I can kind of fill in here,
Yeah.
Jamie. So the theme of tonight is just to give you some technical information, some locations like we've already alluded to. We're talking about one board. We are talking with the city about 2 other locations within the city. One, and we can get into that if you're interested. But so we're not talking about adding boards. We're not talking about anything other than essentially 3 to 5 locations, one within the county. We'll give you the details, we'll give you the benefits that digital billboarding brings, and we'll talk about the safety. Yeah, you wanna go?
Yeah, sure.
Great.
You can see the slide, local government discusses progress made to communicate with the community. That's what we're wanting to do tonight, is talk to you about the digital technology and how effective it is to get messaging out to the community in real time. Do you want to talk about the next spot on the slide with the?
Yeah, so this video right here is something that Lamar had put together to show what these digital billboards can do. So it's not just a sign that's lit up, right? The capabilities for the business community, for emergency services, it can be in real time. And so we can tap into messaging where, and Jamie will get into this, where, really what we're proposing are a slot dedicated, in this case, to the county with, real-time emergency messages. So if there's, I don't know, anything that goes on, a tornado, flooding, anything like that, where the county can tap into that and in real time talk to members of the community.
So this is talking about instant informative interactive iSpot messaging. There should be some volume.
Yeah, there is.
I turned up volume, but I don't know that it's gonna work. Doesn't look like it is.
And that's fine. I don't want to waste anybody's time, but so the gist of it is right there. I mean, social media is a big thing, right? So in the business community, getting real-time messaging, whether it's Facebook or Snapchat or whatever, to be able to have somebody at your business, having a good time or really wanting to advertise that business, they can take a picture, they can upload it to that digital billboard in real time. And when I mean real time, there are some safeguards where, somebody can't just take a picture and it'll magically show up there. We have people that vet that. And so it's like a 10-minute process, but with how advertising is, moving forward, and it's been there for a bit as far as social media, the ability to have a static structure unveil actual real-time social media, obviously for businesses, it's a huge thing.
Digital billboard details. How do they work? Well, they display high-def static images. Digital billboards do not scroll, flash, or feature motion pictures or emit light. They provide a more efficient method of changing billboard copy. 46 states allow them. Wyoming is one of them. They're environmentally friendly. Number of sellable slots are 7. The 8th slot is dedicated for emergency messaging and public service. Dwell time is 8 seconds.
Can we ask questions in the middle or wait till the end?
Yeah, I mean, whatever.
Can you explain how environmentally friendly they are?
Yeah, we'll get to that in the slide, but basically the lighting is, there's, the diodes are shielded, so the light is cast down. We don't have our operations manager here tonight who could get into more specifics about that, but the gist of it is the light pollution everybody's worried about. They don't emit as much light.
But the screen itself does. The screen itself.
The screen emits actually more light during the day than it does at night. So,
And I'll jump in real quick on the environmental aspect. So the big difference between the digital boards and our regular static boards is we're not putting material on it, right?
Yeah.
It's a vinyl material that we put on those structures that we recycle. But it's a product that's produced. And with these digital boards, there's obviously never anything produced to put up there. So as far as, physical waste or whatever we're recycling, there's zero with these boards.
Do you know the energy consumption?
Somebody does, but they're not here right now. So what I would say right now, any kind of technical questions, I don't want to look dumber than I do right now. And so if you have specific technical questions, I know Megan will get you her information, and then we'll get a whole list to you as soon as possible.
Okay, well, go ahead.
And has anybody tested them in terms of impact on wildlife, migrating birds, or?
I'm sure, yeah. Yeah, we can find anything that you want on that. We can find. This is a technology that's been around for 20 years now, as far as digital billboards. So it's something. It's not new. It's new to this community that we're, that we're talking about. But there's plenty of information on that.
So we would have to work through all those details once we have a specific proposal in front of us for a specific sign. So let's go ahead and see what you got.
yeah. So in Wyoming, we currently operate 18 digital displays, the most in the state. Technical information. So with our static billboards, we're committed to reducing waste and consumption. So basically, the polyethylene vinyls are virtually 100% less capture and return for recycling. So, I mean, we partner with, what was that company we partner with, Greg, that does the recyclable, they take our vinyls and do all recyclable bags and
I think it's a company out of Denver that we'll get a certain amount and they'll bring a truck and then we'll dump it in. But there's companies like Rareform. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but they create, and it's not just Lamar, any type of vinyls, and they actually charge a lot for it. They're pretty cool bags, but they're using the good use out of our used vinyl. So
like the recyclable grocery bags and what have you. So, as far as we utilize our own construction personnel when we build and maintain and removing our signs. And we adhere to proper safety procedures in conjunction with OSHA requirements. Our crews have, decades of experience and are experts in the construction and removal aspects of our signage. Maintenance requirements. This is more for the gentleman that's not here tonight. I'll just touch on a little bit of it. But unanticipated repairs and biannual maintenance would be, this open access required year round. Periodically, modules will need repair, which must be completed within 48-hour time frame. That's one of our company mandates on our end. We have biannual maintenance of these. We do summer prep, filter replacement, modular upgrades. Digital displays are replaced roughly every 10 years. So we've been with COVID, it kind of delayed things, but we just, the last couple of years have been replacing all of our older digital units out. With the technology's changed, just like flat screen TVs have gotten flatter. And crane access is required to service them. When we do take those old modules down, those old displays, they are recycled. So we do take them, we break them down, every little component down to the wires, and there's a place that recycles all the materials. We, as a company, use responsible lighting practices. This says we're 8 years into a 10-year program, more like 9, but of replacing all of our lights with LED lights on our static structures that are illuminated. And next slide should be a playable slide. This is one of the vendors that we get our digital billboards from is Daktronics, and that's the one we have most in the state.
And this does have audio too, so we'll see if it goes.
And perhaps with your permission, we can send these via a link so that you can look at them, because it is really helpful, in my opinion, for you to see what the boards actually look like and what you would be envisioning on a board.
And this does answer some questions too on a remedial end as far as the lighting saturation.
Yeah, we'll attach this as,
The link.
yeah.
Yeah. It addresses the power consumption that you were referring to.
So if I understand right, the whole purpose of the presentation is that you want to upgrade a sign on South Third Street?
Mhm.
Well, I mean, do we really need to hear any more?
Okay, well, no, that's outside our purview. The one you've got, well, again, have you kind of finished your general view? Because I think then we could provide some feedback to you that might be useful just to,
About what you just,
as you heard from Commissioner Ben David, there's gonna be just a number of things to think about going forward. We're not gonna resolve this evening.
So, Chairman Hinckley, Commissioner Platt, let me just go up to a little bit of a higher level view. When someone hears the word digital billboards, people have a natural reaction to think, I don't want my community to look like the Las Vegas Boulevard, right? And so what we wanted to do was first provide you at the onset, and we'll do this with the commissioners as well. We've done this with planning and city council at the city level, is to provide some facts and some statistical information that helps answer those questions about what it is you're considering, first of all. Second of all, the thing that is really intriguing to me that I think would be intriguing to you all too, is that the statistic is in the 90% as far as who utilizes billboards. The companies that are local, the businesses that are local to our community utilize billboards. And so why it makes no sense to convert billboards on the I-80 corridor is because most of the users in the community for the locations that we're talking about are going to be our downtown businesses. They're going to be our hospital. They're going to be UW as far as sporting events go. They're going to be things that are going on in the community to say, let me get you this information. The slide that Mr. Rideout showed, if you remember, was actually where it said the community wants your input. That was actually the front page of the Laramie Boomerang. It was saying the community is seeking your input. And so this is an opportunity that we want the governing authorities, right? City and the county to know about is available. Whether the county's code prohibits this now is something we're working through, but we wanted to, like we said tonight, just to be able to give you the opportunity to ask us questions. What is absolutely amazing to me, and I have absolutely no technological skills or resource, is how friendly and how safe these boards are. I wish that we would have had for you tonight a sample of one of the cubes that goes into these large boards. That one cube, if it goes out, can easily be replaced with the 3 others. And so instead of having the flapping boards that you see when you're driving through on a very normal windy day here in Laramie, you don't have anymore. The lighting that is focused, that right now you have a light that shoots up, you have lights that shoot down and are able to be censored according to what the light is that's happening around you. They're able to adapt to climate, adapt to emergencies, and adapt to national disasters. So what these boards do is they have this 8-second interval, or this 8-slot interval. And the county, as I think it was Mr. Ben Dixon said, the county would have the opportunity to have one of those slots. So you would be able, as the county commissioners and the county would be able to have one slot dedicated to reeling real-time information that you want to communicate. So, hey, we're having COVID-19 vaccines available here at the courthouse on this day, or hey, we are offering this event at the hospital for all women to have breast screening. I mean, there are lots of examples, right, that we could think about for fires, for rivers, et cetera. So we wanted to give you, Chairman Hinckley, we wanted to give you this information and have the opportunity for us to get you statistical, factual information back about what they are. And then we'll continue to work with the county as to what that proposal would look like for that board down on 3rd Street. It would be an opportunity for folks as they're coming in, of course, off of I-80 to come into our community and utilize our resources.
So just, what we're talking about is generic change to county regulations across the board, so have to accommodate this, or at least create a variance procedure. But just so we have something concrete in our minds, what board are we talking about?
So it's the board that's right at thank you. It's the board right on South 3rd Street. Basically, if you're looking at Maverick and you look behind you to the right, it's the board that's right there. You see it as soon as you're heading west and you get off at the 3rd Street exit or interchange. It's right there.
You suggested earlier that there were 1 or 2 in the county that you were contemplating.
1 or 2 in the city.
So where's the county?
This
is in the
this
county.
location is county.
It's the county.
That location is county?
Yeah.
This location is county.
Okay, that's
It's
the
weird
surprise.
little.
There's a little chunk there. I know that gets kind of weird down there. All right. So let's bring our staff into this. Right now, all billboards are grandfathered, right? The company line is no billboards, am I understanding what we did?
Right, everything that's out there is out there, yeah.
Okay, I mean, if anybody came in today wanting a billboard, plain Jane digital, whatever, it would be contrary to current regulations, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, our current regulations have a specific size.
It would have to meet size.
Yeah.
And then what you're talking about is in excess of those sizes, I'm just assuming, is that correct? Okay, so what we're talking about globally here would be a change in the sign ordinance, sign resolution that would allow billboards, period. And your pitch would be, we should make that amendment in light of the desirable characteristics of digital billboards by way of community service and value to our merchants. Is that correct?
Well, so we don't necessarily have to allow a defined billboard. What we have to allow is the size, increase the size limitations to allow for what they would like, or, for digital signs of a certain size. So I think for instance, that billboard down there is a little over 200 square feet. We would have to allow for over 200 square feet, if that's what the size of the billboard would be, or the digital sign would be.
Right, but I guess just a second, let me, if I can follow that thread, just the current regulations would not, they're based on size.
The current regulations wouldn't meet that, yeah, because on commercial property, which that property is, we only allow for a sign face of 100 square feet.
Which is I think much less than what we're talking about here. Let's just be
Yes.
clear that this would be a change in the size allowance for signs in Albany County. And the other thing we discussed then, that I'm just trying to remind ourselves of, correct me if I'm wrong, is that a change of an existing billboard from its current structure to a digital medium would constitute, there's no grandfathering in there, that would constitute a new sign,
Correct.
new permit. Okay, all right, I think I got my feet under me. It's been David.
I have a question. So somebody can take a video on social media and live post it on your billboard.
There are only certain people who would have access to that.
Okay. So not anybody off the street.
Correct.
Because my fear would be that if it could be done by anybody off the street, somebody will take a porn video or a rape video and post it on your billboard.
Yeah.
So that is not possible.
That is not possible. And in fact, one of the slides in the presentation that you'll see is the actual media room of where the corporate headquarters are 24/7 that are monitoring all of that. So as Mr. Ben Dixon indicated, if someone who had access, first of all, uploaded that type of video, it would be stopped before it could be reached. So it is, as an attorney, I hate saying something is not possible, but it is very, very improbable.
And I'll just say, my earlier question wasn't adversarial at all. I was just wondering why we're seeing presentational video, digital billboards, because I think everyone's seen one. I mean, maybe not here, but I mean, this to me is like, you know, it's well-established stuff.
So other questions for these guys? Go ahead.
Question. So are these, do they use grid power? Are they plugged into the grid, or I noticed one of your slides had solar panels?
Yeah.
So
Commissioner Kokornik, yes, I'm getting the nod that it is using grid power.
I just thought maybe, you know, if it was like the signs out on the highway that are just solar, in an emergency, that'd be really handy if the grid was down.
I believe the exploration of solar power is something that our operations manager could our operations manager who's not here tonight could absolutely talk about. Craig, do you have anything?
Yeah,
you
I
can
can
add?
talk on that. So,
Yeah.
so we actually have been implementing a lot of solar, a couple of solar panels on some of our static boards. The problem with the digital is it needs constant power. And so if we ever had any issues, whether it rain or sun or
So you have to
whatever,
have
it would,
batteries.
yeah, we need constant power and power with that. Now I'll say, as far as the power consumption, like Megan had said, when it gets darker, it's a lot lower power consumption. And so when you think it gets brighter, it actually gets dimmer. So.
Commissioner Platt, I didn't take your comment at all adversarial.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In fact, I took it like, just grant them the use of the digital billboard now.
Well, if we're up to date, who knows?
So you represented the one of the 8-second slots as being available. That's typical. I mean, that's totally negotiated, right? If the permit could be configured in a way that gave the county 7 of the 8 slots, right? There's no legal bounds to what this agreement would look like, is there?
No, that is a negotiated point, of course, consistent with what would make it viable.
Sure. But that's just your initial thought is that where that might go, but that would be an element of this down the road ordinance that we're contemplating. Okay. What do you think timeline? What do you guys look at?
So we don't want to rush it, right? We don't want to rush it. As Commissioner Platt said, yeah, everybody's seen them. However, it's not being implemented. It's a technology that hasn't been implemented yet in our community. And from mine and my client's perspective, we feel like it can and it should. And so we'd like to talk with you more about this. We'll continue. I mean, David and Joe have been awesome as far as being available to talk about it moving forward. I think we all just wanted to hear what your questions were, hear what your initial thoughts were, and be able to answer those so that when we come back with a proposal, we've tried to already incorporate a lot of those thoughts. I'm hearing, and I anticipated hearing, what are the environmental impacts, how we can get you all of the data. I think it was you, Commissioner David, that's asked about safety and wildlife, and those studies have been performed, and we can get you any of that information and provide that as a follow-up. We can give you the Wyoming and the national transportation studies that show that it does not impact traffic. It's safety neutral and doesn't cause any sort of safety concerns that way. So there's additional information we'd be glad to collate and provide for you.
So other sort of high level, just feedback to these guys, things to think about as they think about it. Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation tonight. So I'm just looking at our current zoning resolution requirements, and we have requirements about the illumination nits. We also have a requirement that the sign shall not revolve or otherwise move in any fashion, and changing a screen to me qualifies as moving. And so, like, I would be averse to changing our regulations with the exception of trying to figure out if there's a perimeter around the city, like the Laramie growth area overlay, where you could allow lighting consistent with what the city, I don't know what the city rules are. I'd like to look at those to compare them. But I wouldn't want to make a wholesale change that could affect all parts of the county. I'd be open to a change that allowed similar lighting that's allowed in the city in a thin sliver around the city. But I wouldn't want to see this kind of signage out in rural parts of our county.
The thought go ahead. For some more.
Just Mr. Ayers had.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Ayers.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just so the commission is aware of what was previously allowed, billboards, well, typical billboards was, you would imagine them were not allowed in Albany County before the sign regulation change. The only thing that was allowed was off-premise signs of up to 300 square feet. And those signs had to be within I'm reading across that language. They had to be within a certain distance of I-80. And that was the only place where signs that big were allowed in the county.
And we changed that. Is that
Yeah.
right? Okay, and that's the thought I was going to share, is where I would come to this discussion isn't how to build a better sign, it's whether to build one at all. And the concept of grandfathering is that the county at this point is on record as saying, we would like billboards to go away. I mean, that's the spirit of grandfathering, is that it's a limited time, and as they disappear, they are not replaced. So that's the starting point for this discussion, is we are moving in the direction of getting rid of billboards. So there's several steps that we don't do billboards at all, and then billboards of a better design. The only thing I've heard in the presentation that would mitigate that thrust would be, is there a legitimate public service value to the billboard? That's an interesting concept. Obviously, it's a commercially viable venture, and you could sell more space and sell more ads. That's great. That's on you guys. But I guess I would have to be convinced that it is, in fact, in the public interest in a way that would reverse the earlier decision of this board and the county. So what it's worth.
Chairman Hinckley, we did provide comments to the county as far as what those changes in the sign code, the impact that it would have on the boards that are there. And, you know, I know it goes without saying and everybody realizes it. I mean, these boards are grandfathered and they're there. And so the question that I would ask the commission to consider is just what is, it reframed a little bit of what you asked, Chairman Hinckley, which is, we have a sign there. Is it prudent and efficient for one of these signs to maximize technology and to be a resource for our community and for our businesses? Because it will be there, it will stay there. We're not talking about putting anything else up. Those signs will stay for a long, long time. I mean, they are built out of considerable indestructible components. And so I'm just asking the commission to think about, you know, does it make sense for us to upgrade? We're going to have that sign there. We get that we don't want billboards being erected. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about creating anything new. We're talking about taking a few isolated signs that are there, that are grandfathered in, and to making them modern and efficient for our community, to help spread the word, to help communicate a message, and to be a benefit for the county.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I mean, or that would go into the crafting this amendment, that would be replacement only. I mean, that would speak to your point.
Yeah, and it's a great point. When we were providing our comments on this, we heard from at least one of the commissioners, which was we want to entertain this ability to be moving towards the modern technology. And so please work with our staff to see how we can accommodate that. So that's really why we're here before you as well, so that we can hear what your concerns are and talk about that.
Fair enough. Thank you for the presentation and points well made. I hope we gave you some feedback that would be useful as you.
You did, and we'll meet with the commissioners and we'll continue to work with your staff to talk about what that looks like. And the size, I want to just comment, the size will actually be reduced from what's currently there now to what the digital footprint looks like. And it's very much going to, it's in a different location, but it's going to mirror what you're already seeing and what the county requested outside of the courthouse. So that's really where we're going. We're going in line with what you're already seeing when you come through our community and what the county just requested to do for its own facilities. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for your support staff here. Thank you. It'd be good to see that you got the whole.
We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Welcome.
It's nice to meet you in person, Craig.
It was very nice. It was very nice to see you too. Can I make a couple more comments really quick? I just wanted to address a couple issues on new billboards. In the last 5 years, we've actually voluntarily taken down 21 structures in Albany County. So it is not, we're not wanting to add a bunch of new locations. We're just wanting to update some of the ones that we have. As far as rural, we're not wanting them in rural. Like you said, obviously we're talking about the benefit to the community. Obviously Lamar wants to make money on them. And so that would be more in town. The size, we'd be looking around 230 square feet. So a little bit over what just passed, but we're not talking a big 1448 that we're seeing on I-80. So thank you.
Oh, that's useful. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Next item is we're moving into current planning projects. Let's see.
Chair, can we have a short break?
Yes. A worthwhile suggestion. Okay, we're adjourned here. You need 10 minutes. Our program together.
Yeah, we are blurry. Is that to protect our identity, Joe? Yeah.
Thank you guys for thinking this through. I mean,
What were you off?
oh, are we back on?
We're back on.
Okay, good. We're back on. Okay, so we're now looking at the zoning resolution amendments, the discussion of the zoning district amendments in terms of how we do zoning. And I was just wanting to start with acknowledging. Are we going?
We don't want the camera on. Okay, whatever.
How much has been accomplished in the last month? I mean, guys took some time to thought this through, and brought us back something pretty quickly, so.
I did it.
Thank you. Okay, she's a social media whiz, so you're in charge. So thank you for that. What I was thinking, we'll get a staff report and then just kind of walk us through the changes that are being suggested. Is that kind of where we're headed? Okay, Mr. Gordon, take it away.
Yeah, so, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, so we, honestly, it was me and Matt, had a brief conversation about, some of the zoning updates that we're looking at doing in the future to the zoning map. And, basically our regulations, are focused on site-specific zoning changes, right? So somebody comes in with their property, they come in with the zoning district amendment, and that's what we do. What's not in there and what was, I guess, overlooked or maybe just thought that we just follow the Administrative Procedures Act and kind of do it that way is the larger scale when we're looking at a large area or countywide rezoning. We didn't have kind of a process for that that's outlined in our regulations. So what these amendments do, I mean, among other things, I mean, they look at a split between an adjudicative process, which is the ZDA process, the zoning district amendment process, which is kind of site specific, with a legislative process, which is for the larger areas, where I guess there's different standards of law that are applied to these different processes. So we split those out.
By the two processes, you mean adjudicative versus
Legislative, yeah. Yeah. And then we also did some looking at some other jurisdictions and how they do things. So we changed some of the verbiage on the adjudicative or the zoning district amendment, what we've been using, kind of what we're looking for in a zoning change, that I think meets that what we're trying to do there a little bit better than what we had. We also looked at the Aquifer Protection Overlay Zone boundary amendment so that we're applying the same process to that as we do with the legislative and the adjudicative zoning district processes that we have outlined here. And then there's other consistency stuff that we did throughout this document. So kind of like, yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell what we tried to do with this. Basically to really just to split those two out. So they're both defined in the regulations and we know how to go about those when those things come up. And, you know, obviously we do everything to keep Matt out of trouble. So.
And vice versa.
And vice versa, right. Keep me out of trouble. So yeah, if you guys, I mean, whatever you're proposing, Chair Hinckley, we can do that. So.
Well, let me just ask globally, but if you already dive into the details. So when you're starting from scratch, you've got a blank slate, here's the whole county, and the legislature authorized the county to zone. And are those procedures laid out statutorily or?
Yeah, they are. I think I know where you're going with this, and it is an interesting sort of thought. But yeah, when the legislature authorized the county to zone, It had the Administrative Procedure, well, probably didn't have the Administrative Procedure Act back then, but it had 18.5, 202B, and 202C, which is that 30 days notice and then public hearing before Planning and Zoning Commission, 14 days notice, public hearing before Board of County Commissioners. Then we had the Wyoming Administrative Procedure Act, which bumped that up to 45 days before the county commissioners and puts notice of consideration requirements in there. So that is the base statutorily. Then at some point, the county came in and created a zoning change procedure. That's not provided for anywhere in statute. In the absence of that, you would just follow 18.5, 202B and C and the Wyoming Administrative Procedure Act for any sort of zoning designation change.
So whether you were zoning the whole county or just zoning my lot to something else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. And the legislative versus adjudicative, all decisions on the zoning designation of property, whether individualized or the entire county all at once, are legislative actions under Wyoming case law. For now. But when we created this application process and these more formalized standards, that put us into much more of a quasi-judicial or adjudicative role. Where you're taking the facts of an application, applying to the standards for a conclusion, either yes or no. So, I think that pretty much everywhere I've seen has an adjudicative zoning amendment type process. Wouldn't you say that's correct?
It has zoning.
Yeah, no, like a parcel by parcel zone change process that mirror like what we have. Right?
Yes, the counties that have
if they have
zoning,
the-
because not
if they
all
have-
of them have adopted zoning.
Sure, but I'm saying,
Yes.
no one
It
is
is all
just
process.
relying on 18.5, 202 and Administrative Procedure Act. They all have these sort of standards, which is a good thing to an extent. Basically, anything that isn't bounded has the process of running against due process principles, which is essentially the arbitrary and capricious standard. So, it's good to, in zoning regulations, kind of standardize decision making. And that's where we are here. The problem is, if we were to rezone the entire county, it is, actually under precedent from the Albany County District Court, we would need to follow the zoning district amendment process for every single parcel throughout the county, which could be fun.
And that's the point you brought up last month.
Yeah,
As perhaps we had painted ourselves into a bit of a corner.
right. So this is an attempt to fix that corner. And a lot of it really was kind of that global versus local thinking of the Aquifer Protection Overlay Zone boundary, which we had developed, and then just applying those same concepts to our zoning district amendment processes themselves. And it's not totally out of line. David found this and we modeled at least just the basic concept off of Laramie County, just down the road. They have the same kind of split out legislative versus adjudicative type zoning change.
Go ahead.
I don't see any reason to rezone the whole county. Why can't we just have people who want to use these new designations do their adjudicative thing?
Well,
Because, to Ms. Bath's concerns, then each one could be, she was concerned about water. That letter that we all got. Then we or whoever the commission is at the time could consider it on a case by case basis. And that would be one of the criteria is it appropriate for that place? And And people already have their land in these zones. I just don't see any reason to rezone the whole county. I just,
Okay, well, part of this came from an initiative that I've kind of pushed forward, but Ms. David, what did you want to ask to that?
So to counter that, if you wanna do any big planning, doing it parcel by parcel by parcel will be too time consuming, right? Isn't that the problem we ran into? If you wanna do the Laramie growth, plan, growth plan, and you have multiple parcels that fall under whatever, the county, the city would like to designate them as using us, then we have to do every single parcel. That way, if we have an overlay, the growth area overlay, we can say all this is, am I understanding?
Yeah, well, or the airport overlay we've talked about, the aquifer protection overlay is another example of those. Those are all,
I'm thinking
Broad
of
brush.
the new zoning
no,
designation.
the residential zoning district.
Yeah.
Different.
Also,
That's what I-
that's part of what this would
Okay,
do. but-
that's what I thought we were talking about. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, it's also, yeah, overlay zones.
Yeah, no, overlay zones I can see the value of, but I'm
Uh,
just going through and applying those. new-
Yeah, no, I think that it's something larger. The one example that I've been interested in, and why I brought it up when we were talking about that earlier, when up at Estherbrook, was the zoning in the county preceded the comp plan, correct?
Yeah.
So I think there's some logic to let's bring the zoning countywide into compliance with the comp plan. For example, we have these scattered rural residential zonings that have.
Okay, yeah, I think I just
Yeah,
misunderstood. what we were-
nobody thought that was a good idea. They never said it was consistent with the plan. It just sort of emerged out of the tax rolls. That's the kind of thing that I would like to be able to say, we're gonna turn all those to ag, which is what we would have done in the first place had we had a comp plan.
Or what you should have done after the comp plan.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Well, or should have done immediately after the comp plan, and that was the other question I'd ask in the planning business. If comp plans get updated, so there must be precedent all over the place for, oh, I changed the comp plan, and out of that, I decided to change everybody's zoning.
Yes.
That's typically what you do. That's the next step once a comp plan is adopted, you change your regulations, which includes the zoning map for the most part, yeah.
And that is not done on a parcel by parcel basis.
No,
Well, it's-
no.
Okay,
I mean, it is in the extent that it affects it on parcel by parcel.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's done in all ones.
just
Like
like
all-
the original zoning.
Yeah.
So we had this plan and we said, this is what it looks like. What gives me pause in that is here's somebody who in 97,
97.
we said, you are zoned rural residential.
Well, no. So there was just ag, commercial,
Residential. Okay,
residential.
Okay, so residential, then later on that became rural residential, but through that process, we said to this owner, and maybe I'm simplifying it, by virtue of the fact that you have a parcel that's less than 35 acres, we're gonna give you this right to subdivide. That's what the zoning did, and we call it by right. So if they were to come in tomorrow and say, oh, okay, I'm cashing in my coupon here, I want an 8-lot subdivision, we would have no recourse but to give it to them.
Well, and case in point, what we just saw was a 600 and whatever
30.
acre parcel that was zoned, was rural residential now, whatever it is now, Ranchette, where, yeah, they could do the same thing, which is, it's those types of parcels, and I think kind of your project or your things you're thinking about, it's like, we would have to go if we followed our rules, like Matt is talking about, what we have today for a zoning district amendment, every parcel, we would have to post a sign on the property. We would have to notice all of the landowners surrounding it. We would have to publish in the paper. That's why this legislative process is, it would have different standards. The standards are, we post in the paper saying we're doing grand zone change over all of these properties, and we're doing some other notices. I think we've included some different, notice, stuff in there. So the standards for notice would be significantly different. Yeah, if we had to do that for every parcel, how many parcels are there in the
Well, there'd
county?
be-
18,000 or something like
And by the
that?
same token, if Mr.
That includes some of the city.
If Mr. Conway had come in and said, I want to subdivide my whole chunk into 2-acre lots with one big one, we would have had to say yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what we're trying to get out from under.
Yeah.
Without then depriving somebody of something they have. I mean, this is where I'm kind of on the fence on it, is if I'm sitting here, I've got my 30 acres and I thought, one of these days, I think I'll just subdivide and move to Las Vegas. I've kind of got that sort of sitting there in my retirement plan. And then I go to do it, and then the answer is, oh, no, we rezoned you 2 years ago.
Under the Constitution, it's not a vested property right.
Okay.
So-
But I'm just, that's my only trepidation here, is that somebody feels like they don't feel like they currently have a by right ticket to subdivide, and we're going to undo that, which is what we did in the first place.
I mean, maybe this is just for the procedures. This isn't doing it. This is not
That would
rezoning.
allow us to do, and we need a way to do that.
Or like to set up an overlay zone
Right.
without having to go through
Okay.
each individual property.
So my answer to myself on that is that maybe more criteria for doing that. Okay, but now we're getting into the details. We can
Okay,
just go through the
that's-
proposal.
no,
That's kind of where my thoughts go, is to
Okay.
try to protect this mythical person.
So maybe similar to the APOZ led essentially like general amendment process. It has to be in response to a land use plan. Like it just can't come out of
Land use what?
a land use plan.
Plan.
So like it can't just be out of nowhere. It has to further a plan. It's not a bad idea.
And on the APOZ, where we blanket brought some people in, we notified them all. I don't know if we need that in statute, but we did that as a courtesy.
Yeah.
I think we all liked that.
Oh, yeah. Depending on the type of mailing, I mean, that can get costly, but
Yeah, not
Well,
really.
and if we think about the process of changing zoning on a large scale, usually it takes a comp plan first, right? So we are already going out and getting a lot of public input before we change the zoning, where a zoning district amendment's different. It's like, okay, well, this is what it was changed after the comp plan or whatever, and now I want to change it to this because I want to do something else, or.
yeah,
You know.
ideally like a adjudicative zoning district amendment. It should be like you have to come up here and convince the county why a deviation from the comp plan is warranted.
Right. And where we didn't implement the comp plan, with our zoning map, because that was not what the county chose to do at the time, just the people, the decision makers weren't really interested in that. They really wanted it just to be, let's make a map that's based on what it kind of is right now, based on assessor's records of 1997. So that's what happened, and it wasn't like implementing the plan. So that's where our problem is we've never really went forward with implementing the plan in that way. We have implemented the plan in a lot of ways, but to go and look at our zoning map, it's still not exactly what was thought of at that time. And it doesn't have to be one for one, but it just really wasn't used. I mean, there were things that we brought up and we're like, hey, this is what the comp plan says. Well, what is it now? It's like, well, okay, we want to leave it that. So, all right.
No, we're kind of bringing zoning into compliance with the comp plan, one by one, 1,000 years from now. We've got things to match.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for that just kind of global discussion. That we have the comp plan, we have the growth plan, we have the resource management plan. Those are all would count as these land use plans upon which we can legitimately make zoning decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the resource management plan too much.
Well, that wasn't
Does that really?
It doesn't impact zoning.
Yeah.
That's
Did
more
that
how
come as a
we,
land use plan?
It does. I mean, it's more to get a seat at the table with federal agencies.
the plan is specific for federal properties. So it doesn't really have to do with like private properties. I mean, there are maybe a few ways that it gets to private property, but I don't know. I mean, we could look at it obviously, but it was adopted under different statutes that have to do with specifically with natural resources. And
Yeah, play with federal.
yeah,
Okay, well-
but like Matt said, it really is a communication plan if, with us and the federal government. But
The thread that I would draw out of that exercise was the county expressed a commitment to agricultural zone. I mean, it was compatible with our comp plan in that way that
Yeah.
it did express some of these land use goals at a global level, which is the point of making the zoning conform with those
Yeah.
broader aspirations.
Mm.
Okay.
And there are, yeah, I mean, sure we'll be getting a airport plan.
Airport master plan,
Yeah, some sort of airport management plan at some point in the future.
I mean, that's just for the airport, but what they'll be asking for, from us is more of an overlay zone for their airport to protect them, so
Yeah, which
protect their.
I mean, legally, the county has to implement land use controls to the extent it deems necessary. Under the that's under federal law, and that's the standard, so.
But so globally, what we're involved in here is trying to bring zoning into compliance with land use plan.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, that's the setting the stage part. Thank you for your indulgence now. If there are more comments at that point, and then we can, when these guys walk through their proposal.
I have one question that I don't know if there is an answer to. Is there any process or law what if federal land is transferred to state control? Or we call it government,
So both federal and state land are exempt under the zoning resolution.
just government. We don't care if it's federal or state.
Well, I mean, we say federal or state. I mean, like we tried to zone federal land. There's that pesky property clause in the US Constitution where Congress controls the property of the United States. The state, we'll see how it goes with Teton County. I am hesitant to say that we can.
I'm
do
thinking
anything.
more broadly coming up with a new administration.
What, I don't understand.
There is a proposal out there to transfer federal lands to the control of states.
Currently, we wouldn't control it, and the question is still at whether counties could.
Can't control a state or a subdivision of the state. That's why we had no say over the University of Wyoming putting a well up on the.
Well,
next to-
it's all, we can't control wells.
No, we can't do anything to zone their land use.
Maybe.
I thought all state and subdivisions of the state were.
It's in
States
the
are
case, it's in
exempt.
court right now. What Teton is doing with that glamping operation, that's the main issue right there. So
Because that's a state parcel.
it's a state parcel that's, yeah.
But our staff's interpretation has consistently been no zoning applies to state lands, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the way it's mapped on our map servers and everything. So that's kind of the current status quo, which is being challenged. Just
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, jurisdictionally, it's hard to punch up.
Well, I'd like to follow up on what I thought you touched on it, more than touched on it. I've got no problem in general with the legislative, form of acting on broad scale across the county, but I would have serious concerns about landowners being contacted who believe that they've got a particular zoning and it gets changed from under their feet without having a clue. And I don't think a notice in the newspaper would qualify anymore as adequate notice. I'm not talking about what's legal. I'm talking about our duty to, take care of our fellow citizens.
Yeah, no, I mean,
How would we like to be treated? The golden rule, essentially.
Yeah.
completely agree, because the newspaper notice is so antiquated concept, but we're still here.
The other thing, which has come up many times, many times, I'm sure will come more times too, is we keep on referring back to how our county originally got zoned back in 1997 and how it's kind of an arbitrary process. But I think that today, this is what we have to deal with, and going back and looking at how it was done and maybe thinking in terms of it's done wrong and we got to correct it or whatnot, I don't think that's the right approach. This is my opinion. I think we ought to work with what we have and where we see things that need to be fixed based on present conditions. Yeah, thinking those terms rather than trying to redress what happened in 1997.
Well, I don't mean to characterize it as a mistake, but it is a chronological fact that we zoned it before we had the comp plan.
And I'm with it.
And then now let's get that back over on this side of the fence. Okay.
And what we've been talking about is, using a comp plan and then addressing things as they are to come to conformance to the comp plan as best we can. And I think that's the right approach. Yeah.
And I think you need to look forward. I mean, there are changes coming. Do we want to deal with big changes parcel by parcel by parcel by parcel? No. I mean,
Yeah, although, as Mr. Ayers suggested, the solid legal ground is to require any rezonings to be based in comp plans. So,
Well,
if we want to strike off in some new comprehensive planning direction, perhaps we should look to the comp plan first rather than just doing it through zoning. Is that where you were headed?
Under the most basic legal principle, planning, predates, planning comes before zoning. There's no legal requirement that zoning cannot, at least in Wyoming, there are some states where it explicitly has to be, but Wyoming's not one of them. Wyoming zoning decisions can depart from the comp plan so long as, there's a rational basis for doing so.
Okay.
But, there are also like certain things, like if we tweak zoning districts to such a degree, it could be sort of classified as a change in designation. Which this would also help address.
So our parsing of residential zonings was not based in the comp plan, but was not inimical to the process you're
I
describing.
don't think it was counter to the comp plan.
It was not counter to it.
Right.
I mean, a lot of what we did was just like put in a map what we thought existed already when it came to zoning. We just didn't go forward and say, okay, now we're going to take the comp plan and it says, this is how we want it to develop. We're going to zone it that way. We didn't take that next step, basically. I mean, I don't think there's any reason not to talk about the past because this is what happened and we're moving forward, right? Like now we can take another step, we can get it to where it can be beneficial.
So shall we go through this and we can give these guys some feedback on the actual language and provisions? We've touched on some general thoughts, if that sounds productive. I'm looking at the red line. At some point, these become so confusing, I can't follow them, but that one was the one that I thought was the basis. Okay.
I'll give you both of them. You use what you want. So
Well, you're gonna walk us through the red line. How about that for start?
sounds good.
That's what you're trying to change.
Chairman's made a decision.
Right.
All right, so guess you guys would just want to look at it and make comments or?
I mean, or I can just give like some, okay, so
Why were you doing what you were doing? Kind of
Yeah.
give us- And then as we come to individual comments, we'll bring out.
So like the APOZ pretty much had completely separate procedures than any other zoning district. And that was in response to the district court's ruling. We kind of had to divorce those in order to move forward as this commission desired. So now this is actually kind of bringing those two back in line quite a bit more. So it's basically, we have the APOZ boundary may be generally amended based upon modifications to the Kappa under the process of a legislative zoning district amendment, which is 185202B and Wyoming Administrative Procedure Act. And then site-specific APOZ boundary, which is more of the zoning district amendment, and the notice. So yeah, the notice is then truncated quite nicely into just the adjudicative, or the procedural aspects are. The only thing that's really different is just it has different findings necessary for approval than a zoning district because of its, well, I guess peculiar isn't the right word, but very unique nature.
Yeah, or than any other zoning district amendment, might be a fair way to say that, rather than a zoning district amendment. That's kind of what it is.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's a site-specific boundary amendment is a unique adjudicative zoning district. With its own application form and contents, peer review procedure and findings necessary for approval. You can go down, dude. It's Joe.
Joe's in control.
So actually it simplifies that chapter quite a bit. If we can put this.
Okay, sure. You want to keep going down?
Yeah, please. If we can just kind of keep that as like the procedural standard for every zoning district. Then please go down more. Wait, yeah, the site specific. Okay, so those are just the findings. Those haven't changed. Official zoning maps. We had geographic areas because like our overlays aren't tied specifically to the parcel lines themselves. Zoning district amendment. So we have our general purpose of a zoning district amendment, and then we have our two types, legislative. First, it involves broad policy decisions, usually concurrent with general. I think that needs to be amendments to this resolution that affect the general boundaries of a zoning district or overlay zone, and thereby the zoning designation in numerous parcels. So we have numerous versus is the standard. These can be brought forth by anyone because essentially this is of such a fundamental change that it's just like a massive amendment to the resolution. So it would need to follow that sort of petitioning of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
So that last line of A, what's the, we simply assert that to be the case. That was kind of read oddly to me.
We asserted that to be the case in the, well, we did earlier. It was somewhere in here.
Okay, but that's appropriate for us to just, I mean, to just say.
Yeah, I stole that from Keith Gingery up in Teton County.
Okay.
And it's true under Wyoming law.
Okay.
So. But I mean, yeah, that's what it is. You're not.
Is that appropriate in our zoning resolution to be?
It was already in here.
Asserting interpretations of state statute is why it kind of struck me as a little odd. But if you're.
It was somewhere, it was already in here. I don't remember where. So I just moved it up to that area. And I think it is appropriate.
And then this is where I thought something like findings, and I'm not sure what I have in mind there, but this was
Yeah.
kind of where I was thinking we might elaborate a bit more on what it took to justify a legislative change. Now, maybe your feeling was we should not pin ourselves down on that, but
No, I'm, well, so it'd kind of be. I don't know, when it's just a really broad policy determination. I mean, like what you say, it's for the public health, safety and general welfare.
Yeah.
I mean, like what teeth, that doesn't,
Like
you could
what,
say that about anything.
well, then it has to be derived from
As long as you
a
have
land use
the codes.
plan or something? Is that where that would?
Yeah, that would, that's
somewhere?
where it would fit in.
Okay, that's.
Somewhere about adding like that it has to be in, it would be similar to the language in the APOZ overlay zone where like generally be amended based upon like modifications to or updates of county land use plans. So it could be some of that nature in order to just, I mean, I hear where you're coming from. I'm kind of like corralling it a little bit. And
Yeah,
I agree with you on that.
You wouldn't want to do too much of that because then it's like, you don't have a specific phrase in a plan that you can hook this to. But
Which is kind of the thing is like, if you just make a text amendment to the resolution, you don't need any finding of the law.
Yeah, yeah.
That's kind of the whole thing with like the legislative aspect is like, I mean, yeah.
So that was deliberate and not omission, that there's no findings.
Yeah, because I was basing this off of 18.5202 and the Wyoming Administrative Procedure Act, which require no findings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also wondered about that.
Okay, no, that's all right.
I mean, we could craft findings.
No, I'm not saying we should. I just, was noting the difference between legislative and adjudicative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'll just mention too is the only place I found that this was split out like this, I believe, is Laramie County. All of the counties in Wyoming, they have basically a zoning district amendment process for parcel by parcel changes, but none of that's described in any of the regulations if they want to do a whole thing. I even tried to like ask questions to other planners, and they couldn't wrap their heads around like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, we have a zoning district amendment process. I was like, well, great, thanks. That's not helpful, but none of them split it out into the legislative process, the larger scale process and the smaller scale. So this will be unique in Wyoming if we go ahead with this.
I like it, but go ahead.
I see why you would want to separate them out. I just get, I go to worst case scenario. So like, for example, what constitutes numerous parcels?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so if I'm a subdivider or I'm a builder and I own several lots all next to each other and they happen to be in the APOZ, I as an individual can come in and try to change a large chunk of the APOZ boundary to get my stuff out. And I don't have to follow the parcel by parcel.
But that's gonna have to be based upon the modification to the cap.
Okay, because that's tied to that. So, but for other zoning districts that aren't tied to a specific land use plan like that, I don't know. I wish that there was a way to make the legislative, and I know you can't because of the administrative process, the state statute, but I'd like to be able to take the individual out of being able to do all this and keep it as like the planning department wants to do this to bring things in alignment, but I guess I can't do that. And it was already a right all along.
Yeah. Now it's just codified. In our regulations, at least. It was always in statute. I mean, numerous means many.
And how many is many is.
Yeah. I kind of wanted a little bit of squishiness.
I have 3 dogs and they feel like many.
Because like, I mean, what if we're talking, small parcels and someone's trying to develop like all that into one thing? I don't know, then, 3 might be kind of an unreasonable. I mean, we could put definitive like numbers on it, but.
Right. I think the squishiness helps.
It's kind of
in the last year, we've approved one zoning change that had 2 parcels and one zoning change that had 3 parcels. So,
Yeah. We also didn't want to say that it was like just for an individual parcel because we wanted to leave that open if somebody's trying to do, you know, a few parcels that are like right there.
But if we wanted to say, change the standards for urban residential zoning, this would be a legislative action. Or we would say that
Yeah.
it's
Then
gonna be a half acre instead of 1 acre.
well, then it just comes down to, that comes down to, yeah, petition to the planning and zoning commission in accordance with 16.3.106, 18.5.202, and of course, chapter 2, section 5 of this commission's rules of practice and procedure.
Matt, why did you, in several places here, choose the language? I was saying affecting the specific boundary of a zoning district, et cetera, and thereby the zoning designation of a parcel. I mean, typically, we're looking at a parcel in any of our applications, not the boundaries of a parcel. Why are we addressing boundaries rather?
Well,
than
it's
parcel
the
itself?
boundaries of a zoning, because of how we defined overlays, or because of section 4, we said official zoning maps, the boundaries of the zoning districts and their associated development constraints shall be determined and defined by the boundaries of the individual parcels which comprise each zoning district.
Okay.
So that was trying to jive with that state.
All right.
Can I go back to the last sentence on A? It just I don't know what it means.
Amending so an amendment to the zoning maps is a matter committed to the legislative discretion of the Board of County
How
Commissioners.
can amending be a matter of committed?
So amending is the matter, and that matter is committed to the county commissioner's legislative discretion.
Because it's only for them
Yeah,
to do, so that the map doesn't get all like willy-nilly changed all over the place.
yeah.
I just don't understand the structure of the sentence.
Amending is the matter that is being discussed about. Maybe it's the use of the word
But
matter.
the matter is committed?
The matter is amending.
No, and amendments to it are committed to the discretion of the commissioners.
Committed as means reserved for in this case, not. But there's other ways to use the word, right?
Yeah, something doesn't,
Okay, well, we don't need to do the finest wordsmithing here. If you find things that work better one way or another, what it says is, we can do this.
yeah, I understand that, but just the sentence
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah.
And if I read it, that's not what I take it for. There's something in the structure of the sentence that doesn't tie together.
If you can make it say what we all want it to mean, then go for it.
I wish I could.
Is a matter reserved for the legislative discretion.
Yeah,
of the
that's-
Board of County?
It's not a reservation.
It's not a reservation. Sole right of the.
I took that from Teton County.
Uh-huh.
And it makes perfect, I mean, as far as like regulatory, statutory writing, that's,
It's right in
That's the
there.
way we say it.
Yeah.
I understand it, but.
and I did take that took that exact language and moved it up from, well, later on, page 7. But,
Anyway,
Um,
to me, it's a cringe, but if you guys, if it works for you, okay.
We'll have an opportunity to massage this as we go along. Other thoughts at this point?
so yes, do you guys want findings?
No, I mean, you explain yourself. That's me. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, maybe where does it talk about based on land use plans?
It doesn't right now.
It doesn't, okay, I guess
So-
I'd like to at least consider language that obligated us to some
Yeah,
tie. Now, maybe I'll.
I guess if you're splitting out zoning districts though, based on like current needs, and that's not in the comp plan.
Yeah.
that would kind of shoehorn you in then against that also.
Yeah, okay, maybe you've talked me out of anything that looks like
Or we can think about it.
criteria.
Or could you add like on A there, that sentence we were just talking about? It's committed to the legislative direct discretion of the Board of County Commissioners, guided by land use plans, current land use plans, something like that.
Well, the previous sentence says are to be guided by and further the policies of the land use plans. So, all right, maybe that's as far as we want to go. I guess that was your suggestion.
Okay, yeah. Be redundant.
I'll stand down on that for the time being.
Okay.
I
This,
got a couple thoughts under notice, that flagged, if you were.
yeah. Do we want a mailing?
I mean, in one place under B, you had, it has, I don't care about authorship here, put it in the newspaper, and then under C, it says on the website, I don't know.
Yeah, so those are two different things. I did write all this, so
Okay.
you're not gonna hurt my feelings.
Okay, in the newspapers are.
The publication, okay. The Wyoming Administrative Procedure Act requires notice consideration to be noticed. Does not say in what manner. State agencies take that to mean that they post the whole thing on publications, but even the Legislative Services Office is clear that that is not required by statute. That's just kind of their norm. We've never done that. Historically, we have not done notices of consideration, which is an issue. We have been in the past few years. But that, the notice of consideration we post to the website, that's like the big lengthy, it's usually about one full page of text because you have to hit a bunch of different points required by 16.3.103. And then we do a shorter publication in the newspaper. And the publication is for the public hearing. It's just providing notice of the public hearing, but we generally try to say notice of consideration can also be found.
So the larger question there is just what in our modern media environment constitutes the spirit of the public notice? And I don't know the answer to that. We just finished a campaign season where people spent a pile of money trying to figure that out. So.
I think that there's a decent argument for like individualized mailings to affect people as long as it's not like certified mail return receipt requested, because that turns something into like $5 per mail.
Return receipt requested?
Yeah.
It's like $9.64.
$9.64 per mail.
Our office isn't really supportive of that. If we're doing a large rezoning of everywhere, that's thousands and thousands of mailings that we would have to send out. Then if we miss one, somebody comes in, we didn't get it, and we look on our list, it's not there. Does that just throw it all out? I mean, I think there's too many problems with requiring that. Maybe in May,
What's your thinking?
honestly, maybe we could just do that as best we can without, but,
Go ahead.
Laramie counties, which we may want to revisit, basically said if mailing isn't perfect, that's not going to affect the validity of this.
even then, it's like,
Yeah.
if we do a whole rezoning of the county, not that we would, but that's a lot of effort. That's a lot of time on staff's part. That's a lot of postage for the county to pay for. And it's already 60 cents a letter, 69 cents. So 1,000 of those that's $6,000, right?
When you sent out
600.
mailings for the APOZ boundary, you did did you do postcards?
Oh, we did regular mailings, but there's only about, what was there? 50?
Yeah, pretty small. So.
I mean, that's different than 1,000. So.
But you did a regular mailing, not a certified.
Regular mailing,
no.
yes.
I mean, just
Yeah.
because that seems like a reasonable approach Because like maybe I don't get my mailing, but my neighbor got one and brought it up, and we're having a conversation about it. It seems like a middle ground on not having to break the piggy bank to notify people, but being a little more, putting a little more effort and than expecting someone to check the county webpage. Or the public.
Newspaper.
Sounds like we need a
section.
What
digital
about,
sign.
what about other media outlet like radio stations?
I mean, pay-per-view, something like that. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard. Like,
So
Yeah.
what is the current, if you are trying to notice, to let the public know what's going on? What's the current thinking in like Albany County? How do we do that? Put it on the website and hope somebody watches?
we put it on the website. We do it through social media. We have in the past printed off, flyers and stuff, post those around town, or in the past, we've actually went to like the smaller communities like Centennial, Albany, some of those places where anybody in that area goes to the post office, so you put it in the post office, or the restaurants or whatever that are in those areas. There's a lot of different ways, when we were really trying to get it out to people, we do the best we can to hit all of those ways, but.
What if you make the interested person who petitions still have to send certified mail to people?
That,
Not fair.
us not?
no,
Is that what you're
no,
saying?
yeah, you can't have two different standards.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, another way to get the information out is a lot of these little communities like Centennial, they used to have a newsletter. I mean, we sent stuff to them to put it in their e-post, yeah.
The whole
little-
district.
Yeah,
I mean, I would revisit the rules of practice and procedure before this commission. Well, those have standards. I mean, you gotta come with substance.
So let's, to give this an example, we want to do a airport overlay. Would be a place where we would do it under this legislative procedure. So we'd drop our maps and we would put it on the website.
That's not a big area though.
No, but I'm just using that as an example. Another one would be if we did what my little dream, if we take all those sprinklings of rural residential and turn them all into ag, that would be another example of the thing we'd like to be able to do with this. The growth area plan.
like in the airport situations, like we could do the mailings for that.
Right.
That wouldn't be a big deal. It's just like, I don't want to make it so like, we do another comp plan and now we're doing a whole nother zoning scheme and we're doing the entire county. Now we have to mail everybody. The little ones aren't that, that's not a big deal.
Drop leaflets by plane.
Well, maybe that's a good consideration for ultimately the people that have got to make the decision, the county commissioners decide whether or not the effort's worth what we're trying to accomplish. And if they decide, no, it's too much work, we're not gonna do it, the benefits don't outweigh the cost, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, so we don't try to write it in. I mean, I guess that's where my thoughts would go. We leave it to ourselves and the discretion of these guys to do a fair public
Notice.
notice. Is that?
At some point, it's gotta be sensible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly,
I mean, it could be, we could even write in like D, like additional notice, like the planning department, planning and zoning commission, and board of county commissioners should, determine determine like other avenues for providing notice. In order to fairly apprise, something along those lines. I mean, it could just be like a reminder section essentially.
Yeah. All right. So
You don't think that would legally box us in anything?
No.
And I think something on the front page of the newspaper would have a lot more impact than something back in the little
I don't, do we get to control that?
No, not the
You
front
could
page.
That's
ask
the
them.
editors.
They want to be locally useful.
I mean, if they came in and did an interview about something with somebody, it'd be on the front page, because that's the local news is on the front
Yeah.
page, everything else is.
David's been on the front page.
Yeah, well, you could issue press releases. I mean, there are other.
We could do that, yeah, we
Yeah,
can,
to somehow get
Yeah.
it someplace other than that back page that nobody reads, right?
right,
All
right,
right.
not the legal section.
The language that we want to put into our regulation doesn't sound like it can really do this. Right?
Well, I mean, just to tell people that changes are coming, check out the website, I guess, is the detail.
But that would be a press release or something.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just thinking, we
Yeah.
don't,
Someplace it's
we
more-
don't want to write, you will issue a press release into our regulations.
No, but I'm just thinking of ways that we
Yeah.
could get, and once a certain number of people in town know it's happening, then they talk to each other and.
Right.
So why are we specifying a newspaper ad?
Well, to a certain extent, that's what I was gonna ask. Mr. Harris is our next, there's a legal minimum of notice that is required, absent which we are challenging, correct?
Yeah, we have to have that publication.
Okay, so we have to do this, is why this is here.
So, but do we have to be specific about newspaper? Can
Yes.
it be
Yeah,
that,
but there-
that
there-
is,
there has to be a notice placed in a newspaper of general circulation, providing, notice of the public hearing at least 14 days prior, and 30 days to the board, 30 days prior to, this commission.
so that's,
So this is required, just a question of whether we want to go beyond this. And I guess what I'm hearing is we want to do that in concept, but not in text.
does it really say newspaper?
A newspaper of general circulation.
That's the term that's used.
Old fashioned. We're gonna use the digital billboard.
Yes.
It's probably an old law, right?
Yeah.
All of our, all of like our local government laws were carried forward from Iowa, almost verbatim.
From Iowa.
When did that happen?
Statehood.
Wow.
A lot of them actually predate statehood and more territorial laws. I guess we had a lot of folks from Iowa. I don't know.
If we're talking about a newspaper of general circulation, then it has to be the Casper Star Tribune, not the Laramie.
Well, that's debated. Now, when I do invitations for bidding public works, we have to advertise in a newspaper of general circulation 3 times separated by and then we have to say, well, is that the Casper paper? Is it Cheyenne?
No, it's actually,
Is
it's
it
not.
the Medicine Bow Picayune? And
It could be the.
No,
Medicine
no,
Bow
then we
Picayune.
just have to have that discussion amongst ourselves. What's fair?
Yeah, there's not like 4, it just has to be of general circulation. So you could do like, I mean, the matter is like basement
The branding iron.
newspaper, and if I give it to 3, we're in general
Yeah.
circulation, it'd be illegal. We've had this discussion amongst county attorneys.
All right, that's a discussion for another day. So we proceed, okay, so I guess where I'm hearing this, then again, think about this as we massage this over the next few meetings, that we are gonna commit to regulation of these notices requirements and not try to be more elaborate. Sounds like kind of where this discussion's ended up.
Or there could be a D, which is like a kind of, think about it. Like an ad hoc should take,
Commissioners may consider additional methods of public notice or something.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
Plant the seed.
Yeah. I like
Future commissions to ignore.
that. We don't want to surprise people.
Yeah.
Anyway,
No,
And I don't
mean,
think.
I'm just being
anybody ever is,
cynical.
Yeah.
I'm being cynical.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just no way.
I mean, just to put in my 2 cents, we're trying to like get to every person that's, maybe affected by these things. I think that our duty is to put it out there in the public where any person that is trying to keep up to date and be a good citizen will find it. And I don't think we really have an obligation to go more than that. Cause like there's responsibilities on both sides, right? Like,
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we're like, all the responsibilities on us, we need to make sure everybody knows. But I don't know. That's just my philosophy, I guess.
There are 2 types of due process, procedural and substantive. Procedure is that which is imposed by law for notice requirements. This meets procedural. Then, of course, there's a difference between that and actual notice, which is that substantive. In the planning and zoning context, it's not necessarily the same, but I mean, there can be a little bit of a gap in between those two. For what is really required under due process. But my advice to you is that this is sufficient legally.
Okay, I guess I'm convinced. My next comments on C, should we move to that one? It struck me that you've paralleled the language of who can bring a request for an adjudicative zoning amendment forward. And that's anybody?
So this,
And we'd explicitly forbid that in the case of APOZ.
well, this allows a private entity, individual or business.
Can I ask?
When we were discussing this earlier, a few years ago, when we were first like going through this, so that's actually the language that was still in Board of County Commissioners, Planning and Zoning Commission, Planning Department, or private entity.
Correct.
That didn't change.
Well, what struck me now is we've tried to reconcile our APOZ to this. And this is Mr. Gertz was largely pushing. I don't want the neighbor to be able to request an APOZ.
Oh, yeah, so we're
zoning amendment.
still,
So do we reserve that thought, and why is it that we think it's problematic for an APOZ?
no, this one, we're so good. The owner of a property may request a site-specific APOZ boundary amendment. That's still in the APOZ.
Okay,
Well, that's at the owner of the property. What he's saying is like somebody else that's not the owner, and that's,
So
I push against it, and they should be at least consistent.
that was for
You know?
APOZ though. And this is what was already in.
okay.
Right.
This is
So
what
this
was
should
already in,
probably
so
be-
this never said owner of property. I didn't change anything there.
No, I'm not saying that, but it should be consistent whatever we do going forward, right? I mean, it
Maybe.
makes sense.
Well, that's the question
Okay.
I'm asking is why was that?
Why wouldn't it? I mean, what's your thoughts, Matt?
Thoughts are that anyone has the right to petition.
That was the side I was on, and I was talked out of it. And in the interest of you can't harass your neighbor, that's kind of where we maybe had a vote on it, but I was on the side, let anybody ask for an APOZ.
I
Right.
thought that's where we ended up.
No, we ended up
We ended up on
restricting it
property
to.
owner.
See, and I like the property owner thing, so.
Oh, no, that's what, we had this discussion.
Oh, right. We've already talked about it. But now going forward, I see what you're saying. I think both sections should be the
So you
same.
do property owner.
Or are they different, and we should just declare they're different? I just raised it because it's the same issue.
Yep.
I mean, so I guess for the APOZ thing, you have to come with site-specific data. Which would kind of require like entering upon your neighbor's property, would it not?
No, not necessarily.
Not, okay.
I could have all my drilling data all around you and say, you should have been in, and those guys screwed up and didn't bring you in when they should have.
Well, if you're looking, yeah, well,
Well, and I say Mr. Gertz was championing that I don't want you to, because then that triggers your neighbor has to mount a defense. And
yeah, it
So-
does.
when you get sued, you lose whether you win the lawsuit or not.
Well, then do you want this to be changed property?
I don't know if that's, I'm asking, do we want to restrict any of these adjudicative zoning district amendments to the owner? What says Mr. Gertz? You were the champion for that side.
What's that?
Would you change this one to say only the owner can bring a petition forward for any zoning district amendment?
What about a developer?
What's that?
What about a developer?
Say at that point, you got, like, it's an agent of the property owner.
Right, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think my argument would be the same. I don't think it's right for someone else to come in and apply for a zoning change for somebody else's property. One of the things we require honestly is on our application, Joe just bring this up, is we require that the owner sign the application, so maybe we just add that there, and that would solve the problem. If they don't get a signature, it's not a complete application. But that's what we do with all of our all of our applications, it's owner signature is required.
Is it?
On our
Is that for-
applications, not necessarily in the regulations.
No, I'm trying to think. Okay, because the applicant is often someone else.
Correct.
Yeah, applicant signs, owner signs.
Yeah,
Oh, they're both signed.
yeah,
Interesting.
unless the owner's applicant, then they send it.
I don't know, what do my colleagues
That should
think?
cover it, right? I mean,
should-
if the owner agrees, then there's no problem, then if they don't sign it.
Okay, we want to restrict these to owners.
Um, if we restrict one of the categories, we have to restrict all the categories.
Well, I don't think so. We could do whatever we want. We could say APOZ special. It has to be the owner and others don't. We could do that. Right?
Well, but yeah,
Until we get told.
What about the
equal?
what about the
protection
legislation
Well, no, we've agreed that the legislative changes can be made
by
by
us?
us
By county.
or by a petition of some thoughtful
Group, yeah.
homeowner. Yeah, there's no connection to ownership of the property on the legislative ones. It's these one by ones that we're talking about.
Okay, so I think, yes, this has to be restricted to the owner.
The owners.
I figured that also. I wouldn't want someone to really.
Somebody
get me.
change the zoning of my
Drag it to
land,
court.
right, no way.
We've never had anybody come into our office and ask to rezone their neighbor's
Neighbors.
property, but you never know, you know?
You never know. All right, for the next iteration of this, let's restrict it to owners. That sounds to be like the
You can always
consensus.
get dragged into court by anyone.
Right, for you there. Okay. If I'm not.
Unfortunately.
It's just, we're still gonna talk more about pronghorns and antelopes.
Okay, moving along. So I know that's a good little discussion and that's a change in what was presented to us. Let's incorporate that. And that's, okay, you want to just walk us on down and sing out if you've got a question, anybody?
So here we keep the mailing, huh?
So with those, yeah, we're required to do that. That's the minimum. And then we're just trying to amongst ourselves decide if it's small enough that we can afford to do individual contacts. Okay, then the other big change, unrelated, is the findings necessary for approval down here.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, and just a quick note, I did kind of mess up. I forget that. Yeah, those need to all go in a level like
Oh.
DE. But that's formatting.
Yeah, so under findings,
Okay,
on D, community need or public benefit.
Oh, well, wait. Mr. Chair, is this? There's been a lot of kind of thought provided into what exactly are the findings? Like what is like the verb that you're doing?
Mhm.
So is that?
Oh, I had some issues here. Some of them, they're not, I'd like to see them all say, we have to affirmatively find that it meets certain criteria. So
Okay.
the language was kind of mixed.
But you're good with just three, which is meets the following.
Okay, so let me catch up with, yeah, except I wondered why you got rid of economic
Oh,
and cultural resources. So yeah, I had some questions.
We
on
got rid of
that.
economic already.
Well, I mean, I think these are the changes I made. Economic, I mean, how do we determine whether there's gonna be economic impact? We don't require an economic study on the properties or what it's gonna do to the surrounding properties.
And the
I
zoning
think
is
it's very,
divorced.
yeah, very,
We're not
very
allowed to look at
subjective.
what's
It's like,
going-
that's just guessing on our part, like,
Yeah,
so that's why I got rid of that.
we're also not allowed to consider the exact development that's being proposed.
Right.
Of the specific development. Okay, so is that right? I guess I was just playing with that. Is it true that we couldn't say changing this to commercial from agricultural has an economic impact or not? Yeah. I don't know, have to know what the commercial specific thing is.
I guess how are you gonna quantify?
Well, and what is the,
Significant adverse economic impact.
I guess, I don't know. I don't understand why that would, why does that matter for us if we're making a zoning change? Like, if we're gonna approve a zoning change or not approve a zoning change? I mean, again, what is the information they're going to bring us? They're gonna say, well, this is not going to impact the economy. Well, actually, we're gonna do a business, so that's good for the economy. It's like, these are all subjective statements. There's nothing objective about the information we ever receive. And that's not something that any of us is qualified to really evaluate, honestly.
And that is something that frustrates me with just like these narratives that we receive, is like these criteria are so lofty and subjective that, I mean, you can say anything about anything. And it doesn't like give this commission or the county really any decent like decision-making criteria, other than they just disclose exactly what their intended development is, and then it's being evaluated from a development perspective and not a zoning perspective.
But we do think about all the possible uses within that zone, right?
Yeah.
So that is I mean, we always do that,
Right.
and that's okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, what about the cultural impacts? I mean, here's somebody who wants to change a zoning change from ag to commercial, and we have reason to believe that there are 1 million teepee rings on that piece of property, and then we say, no, that would be inappropriate to turn that into a commercial zone. I mean, we don't have to have exact criteria, and you guys' response that I've encouraged you to provide often are, we don't foresee any impact, and we're trusting your judgment to, it's a subjective judgment, what's significant, but we're asking you all the time to tell us.
Yeah. So like cultural resource impacts, again, like, how are we gonna know there's 100 TP rings on the property? Unless we have some kind of insider information, like, and if there are, then, does that negate, if we go down to D, community need or public benefit, is that gonna be detriment to the public?
Well,
I don't know, like, that's something like, when they go to develop, they're gonna, they would maybe figure these things out, but the problem is with that is like, all we require is a zoning certificate, and we don't do any studies, so.
no, but this gives us a reason. Let's take, I mean, I just made that example up on the spot, but let's follow that. So if we are presented the zoning change, somebody comes in and says, I'm an archaeologist and I got this data and heard all these TP rings and you shouldn't do this. I want to have something in the statute that gives me a reason to say you can't do this.
Yeah.
And it says right here, I cannot in good conscience find no cultural injury. And
How is changing it from rural residential to estate residential going to impact anything? I mean, you're changing a color on the map. It's not gonna change. You don't need to know if there's cultural resources on there.
Well, let's
I
talk
mean,
about
that would
ag
come
to-
with the subdivision. If a subdivision came in, that's where that should be, like, I just.
Let's talk about a change from ag to commercial, a big step, or industrial. I mean, that's, okay.
Okay.
And there's a whole lot of stuff that could be crammed onto a piece of site by right if it's zoned industrial. And we might consider that to be contrary to the cultural resources of the county.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah, what are,
The Hannah Basin wind farm,
The who?
the Hannah Basin wind farm,
Okay.
okay? Went up on the most extensive geological site with fossils of early mammals from the Eocene that are found nowhere else. And all the attempts of archaeologists, and not archaeologists, but paleoecologists to stop that failed because there was nothing in the regulations that.
So our Wex permit has this finding.
Right, and that was a development, right? They're actually putting something on the ground. It's not changing the color of the map, on the map.
Well, it started by changing the color of the map.
Did they? Because in our county, agricultural is fine. So you wouldn't have to change the zoning.
Well,
Don't,
let's not split hairs on the details of that particular. The point is, changing the zoning changes the possibilities of what goes onto the land. And it may change those possibilities in a way that we feel is contrary to the cultural in-sources or the economic injuries or these other criteria that have been suggested to be deleted.
I mean, I still don't like, how are we gonna get the facts about this? Somebody comes in that says they're archaeologists. Do we know that? No, but they say so at the pulpit. And then they give us all this information, like.
You could get it from like one of the historical.
they have to provide their credentials.
I mean, isn't there other? We don't require anybody to provide their credentials if they get up and have a public comment.
Well, but
That's not a requirement.
Isn't that true of all of these? They're subjective.
Well,
Consistent patterns of development. We just have to say, doesn't look right to me, right?
everything is subjective. Yes, absolutely. But us as planners, that's what we look at. Okay, this is what's already built around here. We can give you that information. We can give you a good recommendation based on that. Cultural resources? Absolutely not. We have no clue. We can, I mean, if we required a study or something from somebody to do this, it's like, okay, well, if you want to do a zoning change, you have to do a cultural resource study on the property. You know, then we would have information, we would have facts that we could use. What I try to do is just cut out things that we can't gather facts. We can't, I mean, even with the, you know, the compatibility with surrounding properties, we can gather facts. Fact is, this is what's on the property next to it. Fact is, this is what the property next to it's zoned. You know, I mean, that's why I'm cutting it out. And I'm, you know, I'm pushing back on this, but at the same time, it's like, if you want to leave it in there, I'm not gonna, it's fine. I'm arguing at this point. So.
That's why we're trying to craft
I mean,
responsible.
Cause it's not that big of a deal, honestly. So.
The point is that a cultural site or a geological site or an archaeological site, most of them are mapped. And why would they be any different than a wildlife habitat?
How extensive are they in Albany County?
Oh, we have a few.
Well,
Oh, we have a few. We have bison kill sites. We have a lot of archaeological sites that pertain to religious practices that were here.
So, but if it's already zoned, see, I don't know, that's where it like gets into development specific, not necessarily zoning. I mean, I understand, well, I guess that's high intensity.
But let's look at some of these the natural environmental resources. I mean, I'll turn to you, Mr. Ayers. It seems to me this whole thing operates within an envelope of available knowledge, and no one can expect you to have 15 PhDs on that
for sure.
plant. And so if the county doesn't know that this is the sole habitat of the XYZ, and they proceed to go with a zoning change, then we've done the best we could.
Okay.
So wildlife specifically is different than cultural resources in that we send these applications to Game and Fish, and their experts look at it and they give us a recommendation back. So that's different than, and maybe I guess we could send it to SHPO, yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
I don't
we
know
have
if
a
they
public
would.
hearing and somebody comes forward, some of these groundwater issues that I've been involved with over the years, somebody comes to our public hearing and they say, oh, here's a huge impact on the groundwater that you don't have the expertise to evaluate. Well, then the applicant has to bring their expert in and we have a little battle there. That's how that works. And then the the deciding body has to decide who they believe. So
I'll give you an example. Yeah.
experts come forward as advocates for various sides are able to mobilize them. And then the decision makers have to make the best decision they can based on the evidence presented. I don't have a problem with that. It seems to me that's what you're doing anyway, all the time. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just an example that archaeology course from UW did some digs in the Red Buttes environmental laboratory and found amazing, some of the oldest archaeological sites in Wyoming. Students. So, we gather information and I think we shouldn't treat it as non-existent.
Okay, I mean, we could leave that in there, that's fine. Like I said, my intent is just to take out stuff that we don't get a whole lot of factual information. And I understand, I get you guys' points, there is factual information out there. I guess we've never dealt with a project where somebody's came in, other than like the wind farm stuff, because obviously there's all of that stuff. But like on a zone change, it's never been, hey, we've, got teepee rings over here, or some of that. So like, I'm fine if that's what you want to do. It's up to you guys what you want to do, honestly. I'm just.
And then, I don't know, the economic impact one, that is.
I agree about the economic one, but the cultural one should be
Okay.
treated like the natural resource one.
Cause like the economic, I mean, yeah, we put it into industrial, it's probably gonna be bringing in a lot more money into the community. But the people that have homes right next to it, they're gonna be upset. So I mean, then it's like, what? I don't know, if we do want to put economic it back in, it needs to be something different than significant adverse economic impacts. Cause it's like, to whom? What is significant? We've never seen a single zoning district amendment that says no economic impacts.
Well, they all say it.
Yeah, they all say.
Yeah, because it's
They're all
always
wrong,
like,
because of course there's economic impact.
Albany County wants or needs housing. It's like, that is true, but I don't know, don't we also need agriculture?
I mean, significant adverse economic impacts. So what is, like, they're gonna have an economic impact. It could be a positive one, but yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I think at one point, and I don't even know where it's at, maybe it's still in our regulations, it talks about economic impacts. It was like, if there are any negative economic impacts that are brought forward by the public, they have to be addressed or whatever. But then you're like already at the public hearing and it's like, I don't know.
No, I think we got rid of that.
Yeah,
For
we
good
did,
reason.
probably. At least I hope so. I just know we had it somewhere at one point.
But could there be situations though where you look to an analog of like this zoning change happened in this community and it brought all the property values down of the neighboring properties by X amount, and it's documented.
I think it's always gonna be specific to the development. More so than the zoning districts, especially with as broad as ours are. Like that's a little harder to.
It's just that the zoning change opens the door to that development.
Yeah.
I mean,
But it could also be, but that might not be what they're doing with it, like what's the actual cause, like, let's take like windmills, even though that is all over the place and what people claim for economic impacts. But then that would be, open the door to say like, well, can't go to ag. Cause then that would allow windmills. And
But it doesn't allow windmills, it's a conditional, it's not a.
well, windmills are always conditional.
Right, so I mean, you couldn't argue like, well, no, you can't zone like tonight, you can't zone that property ag because that means somebody could come in and ask for a conditional permit for windmills. That's a conditioned use instead of a use by right. I don't know.
I mean, that's the more logical argument, but you could also just say we don't even want the possibility of a conditional use permit.
Which is a legitimate zoning decision.
Yeah.
And we don't want to approve that envelope of possibilities.
Right, right.
Well, all right, my feeling is that the more tools we have in here, we would exercise them. You just have to leave it to the discretion of your deciding authority. And they could be challenged if they said, I'm rejecting this zoning change based on economic impacts. And then if somebody wants to say, that's a bunch of baloney, then they can have that argument.
Yeah.
One more.
Okay.
There's no real
Again,
downside.
that's just me.
Yeah.
How the rest of you guys feel about that?
I don't see a downside to leaving those in there, and sometimes you won't know anything about cultural resources, but if you do, it'd be nice to be able to use it, right? So.
Okay, so leave economic and cultural.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, then there's one that's, I bridle at the words may. In this case, the parcel subject to adjudicative zoning district amendment is or may be served by adequate roads, utilities, and other public facilities. What was the point of saying may in there?
Because is means, I think is would imply that, well, I don't know, this is David's language, but.
Well, let me offer my substitute before we go. How about, or could reasonably be served instead of may with that?
Or reasonably can be.
Yes, that phrasing would
Okay.
reduce some of the fuzziness of may to my ear at least. Then that community need doesn't read like a finding, it reads like an exception. What's going on with that? What's the finding there to your earlier question, Mr. Ayers?
So now, well, it would be the applicant has demonstrated that the adjudicative zoning district amendment meets the following, that the adjudicative zoning district amendment addresses a community need or public benefit that offsets the potential impact associated with the proposed request. David, do you have any background on this one?
That just didn't strike me as a finding.
I think it is. It's the first sentence is for sure finding that you're finding that the amendment addresses a community need or public benefit that offsets the potential impact associated with the proposed request.
Right. Basically, is there justification based on a public need or a community need that, supports this zoning district?
And that overrides all the previous ones? I mean, this strikes me as, okay, all that other stuff, if we decide that it's overriding public benefit, then we can go ahead with it. That's why I characterize it, because I stated it too strongly, it's not a finding. Sure, it's a finding, but it seems to me of a very different kind.
So offsets any other?
Is that what it means?
Well, I don't think we want to throw that. I don't think we want to throw out everything else. I think this is just something that should be provided, like another piece of this puzzle, I guess.
Why should a private property owner have to provide a community public benefit for something they want to do on their own property?
Because they're changing the zoning, which is going different from what our policy already says.
I mean, there's always going to be.
They have to justify that this is going to be good for other people and not just,
But let's say in the wildlife, I concluded my zoning change is going to preclude the use of this by wildlife. And when we would normally say, well, you can't do that, but then this says, oh, but it's going to be so great for all these other reasons that this says it's okay.
Right.
If I say it reads to me like an exception, it's saying you can have failed some of these other findings, but if there's an overriding public benefit, then that's okay.
I mean, I don't think that's the intent. The intent is this just to be another finding. So maybe we just need to reword it. Is that what you're saying?
Okay, what is the finding that isn't an exception to those others?
That there is just show that there's a community need and benefit.
And do we
So
want
it's another
everything
tool.
else?
It's another tool that might have some compelling reason to use it, even though there'll be other adverse impacts.
But would we reject something for lack of a public benefit?
Well, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't think
This
so.
strikes me as
Because it
something
doesn't say that we
unusual.
have to reject it
Yeah, what if I just want to develop my land and make some money?
Yeah, exactly right. We don't have to
This wouldn't
find.
apply.
Well,
But
this,
then you would have to meet all the other criteria, but this one would give you a tool if you wanted to override those other criteria, because this is something that we really need.
Well, David, didn't you,
I think this is from Laramie counties.
and this is a
And I
common finding.
Probably. Yeah, that's pretty common, yeah. Like honestly, if you look at findings for zoning district amendment, they don't include cultural, they don't include economic. They include like 3 findings. It's usually like, does it fit in with everything else? Does it, can transportation stuff work around here? Is the road's gonna, access this for public safety and that kind of thing? And then this is another common one, is just like, is there a community purpose for this? Is there some way it benefits the community? Can you tell us about that, basically?
Because you developing your land and making money generally benefits the community.
Maybe environmental, I think I've seen some environmental too.
but in other jurisdictions, you are required to find that there is a community benefit in order to allow.
Not all, at least in Laramie County, because I'm pretty sure that's where it came from.
Generally, there's not very many zone changes at all. You stick to your zoning map unless there's a reason to go away from it.
Yeah, like in most other states, you don't get a zoning change. Like that's just like the reality. I mean, unless you can show that like they didn't implement the comp plan correctly.
This doesn't say that you have to show there's a public benefit. It just says that if there is, you can use that to justify a zoning change in spite of other reasons, right?
Diane, I read this as a positive finding you gotta make, but that's just how I read it.
I read it as an exception, so there's an interesting thing. Maybe this is all just a big drafting issue.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I read it, is that that's,
To me, it sounds like this is gonna be really, really bad to everything else, but it does have a public benefit, so this is the finding.
Well, I mean, my torts professor always said, America needs concrete.
The what?
America needs concrete. And you don't get to complain about the fugitive dusk. Because the public benefit outweighs your personal property rights.
like, maybe the airport is an example.
Well, if the fugitive dust causes school children for 50 miles downwind to die of asthma, then darn right we could consider the dust.
Yeah,
It's all
but
just balance.
but you just being right next to it, you're probably out of luck for any sort of nuisance or trespass claim.
The hard part I'm having with this one is we're talking about land use, but then we get into examples of specific land uses. Like that there's gonna be a public recreational facility. I mean, that we're saying, okay, you can zone it this way, but when we do that, we know we can't control the ultimate destiny of the property. That we're opening the door to now all of these, use by rights. And without knowing if that's really gonna be the ultimate outcome for the property. I mean, it's sort of tied to the development aspect more than to the zoning change to me a little bit.
We've done it with a church that was going to have a gym in it.
No, that was a conditional use.
Hmm?
That was a conditional use.
Which is the next item on our agenda.
So leave it or take it. Take it or leave it, whatever. I don't know.
I sort of see it as a slippery slope of people just saying, we need housing. This will give us housing.
I already say that.
What if you take out the examples and leave it
Yeah.
more to the discretion of the commissioners? Whether or not it really is a compelling public good.
I would just cut the whole thing and that's kind of tacit in these other ones. Do we think it's compatible? I mean, there's a, in the back of one's mind, is it something that's justified? I think that this just kind of floating through any of those other criteria is what does significant mean? What is adequate? Those are all context of what what else might happen.
I think about that zoning change that got denied out at the Wild Horse Ranch. They wanted to make that parcel commercial. They said they wanted to put a gas station there. The fire department said, if I'm remembering right, that the ingress egress wasn't safe. And, but you could argue that, well, but it's an important benefit for this local community. They have to drive all this distance to find gas. I mean, that, you know, where would this kind of clause get you in a situation like that? Because it's sort of a values judgment, I guess, about like, do I want a gas station with potential leaking tanks near my private wells just so I have the convenience of this service in this rural area? Is it so important to some people that it's worth taking the risk that you don't have proper access for whatever our number C above is, or alphabet letter C. So I don't know. I see it as that it could be a misused thing.
All right, let's, you want to make a motion to that effect? And then we'll just split the.
That's a compelling example.
I'm just looking for, let's come to a decision on whether this thing's in or out.
I make a motion that we delete this section.
Second for that motion? Okay, we have something to discuss specifically. Further discussion about it. The motion on the floor is to delete that
There's a way
section.
to include that concept of like, we want to factor in if there's a public benefit. But it isn't like a requirement to have it be a finding. And it doesn't negate the other findings, then I wouldn't have so much trouble with the concept. But the fact that it opens the door to negating other findings is what has me concerned.
Okay, that would be a speech in favor of the motion, and we can remand this to our drafting
It
crew.
can be wordsmithed differently.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Okay. So this language is rejected. If there's a way to preserve some of the aspects of it to which we're sympathetic, can we try again?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. And good discussion. I mean, this is meaty stuff that'll be something that Mr. Ayers will not have to litigate if we do it right.
Or just makes it a lot easier.
Okay. That's all I've got on this piece.
Yep.
Others?
Little typos, but I don't think
Yeah,
at this stage we don't need to worry
I think
about
I caught a lot of them
Yeah.
today, rereading it, hopefully.
And I like that exempt the last thing, if that's fair. We aren't saying that they're exempt from zoning, we're gonna zone them all ag. That's what's the intention there.
That's existing, and that's how it's been.
Yeah, if state land or federal land,
Yeah.
it's privately owned, it's automatically on that.
Okay, done with that one? Some of this will show up again in the next one. Okay, so this one came out of our wanting to add wildlife and so forth. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, who's giving us the walkthrough?
All right, so this is, this started with adding wildlife to conditional use to, hey, let's just rewrite the chapter.
Yeah, what's that? And then the rest of the afternoon you can spend.
Right, so what we're looking at is, obviously, the conditional use standards are in here that we've been trying to amend to get to a place where we feel more comfortable and added that wildlife section. The other sections are I guess maybe we could entitle them things we do already that we should probably put in the regulations. So like, not that we're like asking for anything that I don't feel like we can by our regulations. For example, our zoning certificate application, we're asking for, hey, give us a building plan to show us what this building is used for. Because if we don't have that, is what happens. They say, this is an outbuilding. And then a couple of years down the road, there's actually a dwelling in this outbuilding when they go to sell it or whatever. And now we've got a problem. So we're trying to get a building plan so they can show us what the building's for. If they're putting an apartment in it or something, now we can enforce our ADU standards in a better way and not have to do it after the fact. So we're kind of including some of these things in here so that we can, basically codify what we're doing, and make sure that we're doing things right. And I think it just becomes a little bit more defensible once we have them in regulations. I think that Mr. Ayers would agree with that. If we have it in regulations and we follow that and not just putting it on application, it's probably better.
Or enforceable.
And enforceable, yeah. The other thing is, let's see, we've added a section for change of use, zoning certificate. So we actually have a change of use certificate because all these things in here are because of problems we see on a day-to-day basis. In this situation, we have somebody that has a dwelling on their property, something that's got a kitchen, a bathroom, living area. Now they want to put a new building on there, but they don't want to remove this building, the building that's already on there. But we consider it a dwelling, and they're like, well, it's actually just going to be our storage or whatever. And so we now have a process to make sure that it's not going to be used for that they remove some of the facilities and things in there to show that, yeah, you can put on a new dwelling as long as you show us that you're not going to use this one as a dwelling as well. So that's kind of where that came from. But all in all, it's really just to catch up on things that we probably should have codified. I guess the one change in the zoning certificate stuff is we require surveys or a site plan that's stamped and signed by a surveyor for the Centennial area. We want to expand that to anything that's 2 acres or less to require that. We still have problems in other areas besides Centennial where people are maybe not building on the right property, those types of things. Yeah, so
Obviously not building on it.
yeah,
Knowingly.
and then so we wanted to add something to catch some of that, hopefully all of it, but we're really just trying to update to what we're kind of doing right now, as well as add some regulations to ensure that we can catch things before they become a problem that we've seen.
So on that last point, maybe I read it too quickly, that the little guys have to have a professional surveyor, but the big ones don't.
Correct.
Unless.
That seems crazy. What am I missing? That seems backwards.
So, well, the little guys, they have a smaller piece of property. And because of that, we want to make sure that they're building on that property. If they're bigger and they can reasonably show that, they're meeting setbacks, they're going to be in the middle of their property, they're clearly not on anybody else's property, then maybe we don't require that. I think the caveat with that is we still left it in there as like, if we feel like, we might need a survey or a surveyor to stamp their site plan, then we're going to require that.
So like a wind farm or a cell tower, maybe it's like a huge parcel, but you want to be assured that they're going to locate the tower a distance where if it falls over, it's not going to go on a neighboring property.
Well, that shouldn't be too big of a problem. Like with those examples, we require a surveyor to do those, like a tower application.
Oh, okay.
Or a wind farm.
Section of
This is more like,
conditions.
a house or an outbuilding.
Okay.
type thing.
So it's the will clearly be met, I guess, is the piece that I was reading past, where you're saying that they don't have to have the survey then.
Yeah, if,
Okay.
yeah,
Passes the eye test.
Yeah, all right, I get
It's
that.
like
Good
my neighbor
explanation. Okay.
built his house on my water line. Because there were walks everywhere else. So he had to dig me a new well.
yeah, and really, again, we're just trying to avoid issues that we're seeing all the time.
I
So,
understand.
Well, Mr. Chairman, as I read these, these strike me as completely sensible.
Yeah.
now I don't know how these will go. This is a big change for our community, the county specifically, because it's, yeah. I don't know if they'll be popular to change to require all these builders to come in with site plans. They may not be happy with this, so. I don't know.
But it's.
Now we
Need a
have
zoning
examples of why it
certificate for
should be
a building.
required.
Right.
Yeah.
Some very salient examples.
What's that?
So now we have some very salient examples of exactly why this is necessary.
Yeah. Well, yeah. More than you would.
You have lots of examples.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm agreeing.
That's the property owner, right? Because like, I'm the
Absolutely.
subdivider and I'm just putting stuff down willy-nilly. And I don't care when you buy it that you find out later that I built something on somebody else's property. I mean, that's what the Sherman Hills area is dealing with like, oh, my leach field is on my property and my neighbor's property.
Or in some instances,
Yeah.
you've seen wholly on someone else's property.
So what
Yeah.
happens?
Yeah, well, it's terrible.
And I mean, I think
Or
it
their
goes,
house.
it goes both ways where. Like you as a private property owner are sort of endowed with a fundamental. Responsibility to exclude others from your property. So I don't think that it's completely the county's responsibility, but since we do have zoning.
We do like to help out where we can.
Yeah,
I thought I just had to
So
exclude
what happens if
cows.
somebody build a house on your property? What
they come to David and they say, what are you gonna do about it?
That is absolutely
Yep.
accurate.
Yeah, they want us to fix their problem.
And I say, what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
So you sue your neighbor and then make him move their house?
That's an objection.
Yep.
yeah,
Or to buy
We've-
the
we've
land
got
from you.
yeah. If you watch some old Board of County Commissioners meeting in the last few months, there's a gentleman that's going through that whole deal right now.
It's incredible.
Oh, it was the Centennial where somebody built in the county easement. They built their house right there in the county easement.
That's all of Centennial.
Yeah, most. I actually think the school was built in these,
Well,
they got it vacated or whatever.
So then the owner came to the county and said, well, you better just give me that easement because my house is already there. And the county said,
Yep.
oh, pay me for it. You buy an easement from me, it has value. And the owner said, well, what are you gonna do, tear my house down? And somebody in the audience said, hey, I got a bulldozer, I'll tear that down for you.
I mean, there's gotta be a consequence, right? Yes.
Well, their idea of consequence was, that's a done deal, give me the land for nothing. All right, anyway,
Wow.
that's good stuff. All right, I'm down to findings. Are we ready to move on to that section?
Sure.
Okay. Proposed conditional use, this is, I'm down here under this is,
7.
we're on the new thing here. This is where we've added some of the stuff we talked about, the findings that we want to be able to accept or reject a conditional use on the basis of. And it's this phrasing of addresses that you should probably have a good answer. I don't care for that. If you require me to address something, it doesn't mean I have to solve it or meet any standards. It just means I have to talk about it. So
That's the point, I think.
well then, okay, so my wildlife impacts, yeah, I want a conditional use that's gonna kill everything in sight. I have addressed it adequately. I've thoroughly given you all the facts you need. You can't say no because I failed to address it. You can say no because I've It's gonna kill all that wildlife.
So you want that changed to like how it is?
Complies with the following criteria. What was the point of adding about addressing it? What was what it seemed to me that relieves them of the affirmative need to comply. Okay, so unless there was a good reason to add that language, I didn't see that it added anything. And to me, kind of
And just
softened the blow.
do the same as the zoning district amendment, meets the following.
Is that what's what we want, right? We want it to be compatible with surrounding uses, and we want it to be da 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 da. Same issues we had with the deletion. So all of the.
Yeah, I assume we're gonna do reinstate economic and I don't know, cultural.
The cultural wasn't even in here, was it?
No.
Should it be? I don't know. I didn't feel strongly about cultural. It was just a more tool that should be looked at. Conditional uses are a much smaller matter than wholesale zoning change.
I mean, I think cultural fits better here than a zoning change, in my opinion, but that's up to you guys.
Well, what's the sense of the board? Put it in.
Might want it someday.
Just like the others.
And does everyone want meets, the proposed conditional use meets the following?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure. Then I stumble on the word mitigate. What that means.
Well, okay, so if you have an absolute finding, then nothing can ever be done.
Well, in our original language, there were things like, well, it's not this original language. Elsewhere, we've said environmental impacts, that there's no significant impact, or we've softened it by whether we think there's an unacceptable, or we've given ourselves the option of saying we are rejecting this proposal because of environmental impacts.
So all there was before was air and water, and now mitigate adverse impacts. So this is, well, actually, air quality was just mitigate impact at or beyond the property line, didn't have any qualifier of impact. And water was just mitigate any adverse water quality. So I guess that's up to you for how far you go, but we ran into this with rail tie. I mean, if you just say will not cause significant, or well, what was, I don't remember the exact language, but if there isn't a mitigation standard, then you can't approve anything.
Can you say mitigate to acceptable levels?
Well, I don't know if we want to be getting into levels.
That would leave it up to the discretion of the commissioners.
That's
to
the
what
issue,
it
is we can't determine what's acceptable or not in terms of levels.
Why can't we?
That's
Because we're not
DEQ.
experts.
That's all DEQ. We can't set level standards like with water. Like we couldn't set. You know, we're saying it's 10 or like 5 milligrams per liter of nitrate.
Okay. So, but I mean, mitigate could be a very slight thing that still leaves a nasty effect, a nasty impact.
What is
Like wildlife, the proposed conditions will mitigate potential impacts to wildlife. That's the new thing we've had.
Mitigate means limit the impacts, right? I mean, what are they gonna do to limit the impacts? Obviously,
Well,
you know, if you build a house and you're gonna have a dog in an area where there's deer, the dogs are gonna chase the deer, so I mean, there's gonna be impacts with anything we do, but like, what is it that we do to limit those impacts? I mean, I think that's,
And I think that's how I read the overall little D statement, is it addresses whether and to the extent to how they're going to comply. So not only are they addressing, they're telling you how they're going to. So in that, they have to tell you how they're gonna mitigate impact to air quality, water quality,
whatever.
Well, for you to be able to find that they are adequately mitigating, they're gonna have to tell you how. I mean, I think that's,
Well, it could be, so it could just be that, and this wasn't in here before, but the standard we have in wax permits will not adversely affect.
right.
I think that's a little. It's a little better of a, if you want to go farther than mitigate, then it's just an affirmative will not adversely affect. And then that helps not get too far into DEQ. I mean,
I was not uncomfortable with shall not adversely affect. Say strictly speaking, if it discomforts one antelope, that's adverse and you can't do it, but I wasn't troubled by that language, shall not adversely affect.
it was minimized was the issue in that case, but yeah, okay, I mean, we don't have that, but.
How about, will not create significant adverse impacts?
That's fine.
Sure. Yeah. Will not.
That applies to all of these. You can use that parallel language.
Not create.
So somebody could say, like, I don't know, just looking at some of the conditional use options people have out there. Like, I'm gonna propose a use that requires a conditional use permit. I'm gonna have an equestrian facility, and it's gonna raise a lot of dust, and fugitive dust is gonna go into other people's yards. But I'm gonna build like a fence that stops the dust. So I'm preventing an adverse effect through a mitigation.
Well,
Like, it doesn't preclude somebody.
then I guess it's not creating a significant adverse impact, because it's mitigating it.
But it would were it not for the mitigation.
But they have come with a proposal that in total does not cause an adverse impact. And that's what we're after. So I would just stop right there, whether they created it in the first place, mitigated it, or whether they never created it.
No, I'm just saying the new language is open. It leaves the option open for someone to come in with a plan with mitigation strategies.
Which, I think that's covered by simply saying you are required not to cause significant adverse impacts. So, you can get to that point by various routes.
Are we okay leaving the word significant is a little bit squishy? Somebody's gotta decide what's significant.
I think we leave it squishy, whether it's adverse
That's
or
handy. I mean,
that's there.
yeah, if we had to fit any diverse
I would
situation.
say without significant, that's adverse.
No adverse impact.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm happy.
But no means, I mean, you build a house and you're driving to it all the time, there's a certain amount of air pollution. That's,
Sure, sure.
no, is going back to what Matt said, but you can't do anything. What do we do? Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess it's how much squish there
I
is
guess
with the
if
words.
we're okay with significant, then I'm.
Either way. Okay, where are our advisors landing on this?
Sorry, no, I think the proposed conditional use will not cause significant adverse impacts is.
Okay, and that suits to all of us. I think that's consensus. of
That's
what I'm hearing.
livable.
Okay.
There was one other one here about. And all of the zoning certificates, that's all new stuff, but that was what Mr. Gersh explained to us earlier. was necessary to,
Yeah,
just to give us tools to. Okay. That's all my comments.
It's all mine.
Others? Okay. So going forward, we'll see another iteration of this.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks for looking at this. I mean, I just feel like across the boards, we are getting better regulation. Hope that's true.
We hope so.
Well, I mean, it's easy to kind of take the, yeah, this kind of has worked for us all these years. Let's just leave it alone. I appreciate the affirmative initiative on you guys' part. Let's make it work better. We'll do Matt out of a job entirely here. If we get this really right.
I bet Matt's not worried.
All right, let's proceed to our staff updates. That's nothing too controversial there, although I think we're all curious about what happened with the county commission the other day.
All right, so fund resolution amendments to the aquifer as well as the wastewater regulations amendments. So they're now been pushed back to the December 17th meeting. I think it's the 17th. The reason is there is a provision in the statutes, and Matt probably should be talking about this because he's
Yeah.
way smarter, but you want to or whatever.
Wyoming Administrative Procedure Act provides for those requesting advance notice of that notice of consideration to receive it. There was a request given, which clearly fit within the scope of these amendments in 2020.
2022.
No. Was it?
I think it was 2022, yeah.
For what? Yeah, 2020.
That was when the
Yeah.
that was when
Yeah, you're
the
right.
email was provided.
Okay, sorry, in 2022.
Like November.
And that mailing of that notice of consideration was not provided.
So there was a request for them to be mailed notification anytime it had anything to do with Casper Aquifer and Aquifer Protection Overlay Zone. So we actually did that with, I think it was the January meeting we had, that when we approved, I think it was in January of 2023 or whatever, we did those amendments. So we did that. We mailed the stuff to the gentleman that asked. And then after that, we didn't really notify him or anything about those things. The problem we had is, like, one, we forgot that he even sent an email to us 2 years ago. So, and how long does this go? And statutorily, what does it say? Doesn't.
Nothing.
So anybody in
Goes on.
Albany County can place an affirmative burden on you forever to tell them about anything that might affect anything.
That's our argument.
Well, that's craziness, but that's the interpretation.
Well,
Wow.
Jennifer Kern at the other meetings, I mean, she did mention that she's going to look into that to see if there is an end date or how that can be applied or whatever. And I don't know if Matt's looked into it much or whatever, but ultimately in the statute, it doesn't give an end date, so. But yeah,
So you have to.
so what happened was we sent out the letter to the requested party or the party that requested it. And then we moved that back, republished everything, and then we're gonna have a public hearing on both of those items in December 17th. To meet all of the requirements.
And that decision was keyed by the county attorney opining that state statute required this notice that hadn't been given. Is that correct?
Not exactly, but. Well, I'm not gonna get into
I
my
don't want
legal
to prejudice in
advice.
a legal
Here.
proceeding, but
Basically, my office was told to send it out and we did it, so. And we moved it back, so. Yeah, that's another one. You could watch the video on the Board of County Commissioners meeting.
well, I think those who's watching ended up kind of slack jawed on it. As I say, just the opportunity for anybody. I mean, if I wanted to gum
Yeah.
up the works, I could tell you guys, I need a notice on anything you do forever against anything in Albany County, because I'm interested. That's
Yeah.
just craziness, but sometimes the state law is crazy.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
So anyways, that's what that's what happened, and we're moving forward, and we'll see what happens on the
Okay.
17th.
And we're reasonably confident there are no other landmines lurking out there. I mean, it's a facetious question, because how can you know what you don't know?
Right. I thought there wasn't any before, so like I thought we were good. But...
Okay.
So is there any other questions on that stuff?
The expectation is that both of these two will be before the county commission on the 17th.
Correct.
And at that point, they will have fulfilled all of their notice, public comment period, public hearing requirements. And if they so choose, they can make these part of permanent regulations.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, ready for the next one?
Go ahead.
All right, Laramie Growth Area Plan, intergovernmental agreement. So we've had some more back and forth with the city. We're meeting with them in a couple weeks. I think the first week of December. To discuss this, the agreement. So there's some hangups on a couple of the provisions, and we'll see how it goes. So then the zoning resolution updates to the zoning district. That was approved. So we now have, what are they? Ag residential, rural residential, and
Jets.
chits. So
And then I would share that you responded to me that you had contacted the Baths with respect to their comments, and explained to them what was going on. Is that correct?
sort of, she called me, but
Okay, but anyway, that,
we've had some discussions.
that
Yeah.
comment that we got has been followed up on it.
Right.
And okay, no further action is necessary.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I think that's it for updates. Unless there's anything else I'm missing.
Any, as far as timeline on the growth area, the plan, any further developments on that? In my notes from our previous meetings, that was kind of coming soon, and it's been coming soon for a long time. What's still coming soon?
Coming soon, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so some of this other stuff we really dug into this last month, so I hope to have it before you next month.
And is it in the city's court or ours at this point? Oh,
The
IGA?
the implementation's just us.
Okay.
Obviously, we'll send it to them for their review and comment. So what you'll probably see if it comes before you next month is the draft text, some text drafts, as well as a map to start looking through. If not, I can for sure probably get the text stuff here next month, I think. So, but also once we kind of look at it, I think I'll send it over to the city and then they can look at it too. Kind of the same time, I guess. So, but yeah, we're still working on it. So,
And the IGA specifically, though, that was something that the city was drafting.
they've drafted and we've helped them redraft it, and it's still, they sent out what they thought was the final. You know, they had it for a pretty good period of time without us seeing it, and then they sent it to us, and actually they were going to put it on the agenda for their planning commission before they sent it to us, but then, well, actually it was on the planning commission. Then they sent it to us, and then we looked at it, and then we had a few problems that we wanted to resolve, so kind of got pushed back, and now we're gonna have that meeting and see where it goes, so.
So it did get put into a city planning commission packet?
I don't think
I don't
made the
think
official
it
one,
made
but
the
it was
official
planned.
packet, yeah.
Oh,
It's on
so,
their
Yeah.
draft agenda or whatever.
and then it got pulled.
Yes, yeah. So.
Okay.
But yeah, once we have this meeting, then hopefully we'll get things figured out and I'll bring it to you guys to look at, so. It's the plan at least.
Questions on our updates? Anybody? Okay, anybody else got anything else? Comments? Okay, thank you for a wide-ranging. I hope productive discussion, and many of this is to be continued. Nothing further to come before us. We'll be adjourned. Thank you.
Stop the-